Ain't all sunshine and rainbows. It's a very mean and nasty place, and I don't care how tough you are, it will beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it. You, me, or nobody is gonna hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done.
When the moon hits your eye like a big pizza pie, that's amore. When the world seems to shine like you've had too much wine, that's amore.
A beautiful Thursday morning here along the Cape Fear region. 7 minutes past the top of the hour, and you're tuned in to the Big Talker, 106.7 FM. We are overlooking Battleship, North Carolina, on the banks of the Cape Fear River once again today. Our call-in number is 910-299-7535 if you'd like to be a part of the show. That's 910-299-7535. So if you were tuned into the program late Wednesday, I would say the final 45 minutes of the program, we rounded out the show with two conversations focused on leadership, focused on entrepreneurship, and some of the things going on right here in the Wilmington community, trying to spark that entrepreneurial spirit amongst those who are looking for some hope, those who are looking to change the direction of maybe their family tree. Showcasing that there are, in fact, even in this chaotic time that we're living in, that there are, in fact, opportunities out there for people. Especially people who may have the chips stacked against them. And in talking with the two gentlemen who appeared on the program, and Gerard Newkirk from Genesis Block locally, and our weekly spotlight with our friend Richard Battle out of the great state of Texas, providing a mindset that you don't necessarily see or hear on the news cycle or through the social media. You certainly don't see it or hear it on a regular basis from our elected officials, particularly those who are very comfortable within their elite class of folks in Washington, D.C. And we pointed out time and again here on this program, and in fact, we want to spend more time on these sorts of conversations rather than the make your hair turn gray sort of way of life where the news drives us these days. People like, and it's been a while since we've been able to catch up with him for various reasons, but people like Lenny Simpson. And again, yesterday we spoke with Gerard Newkirk of Genesis Block, people who came from very humble beginnings. Though people who had a nuclear family that cared for them, supported them, disciplined them in their upbringing, and taught them how to critically think through the things that you see and experience day to day. And this idea that, hey, you might not have your cake and eat it too right now, but that's okay. That you are unique, you have individual talents and abilities that you can foster over time that will lead you to a life that doesn't have to be the way you think it's going to be. So as we kick off this morning's broadcast on that note, we talked a bit about leadership yesterday and the characteristics of a good leader, and how when you are able to bring people alongside you, you mentor them, you foster to them, you take the time to mold the ones who are getting ready to take the torch, whether it be in business or in other sorts of roles and the many different endeavors that people embrace day to day. That's a sign of a good leader. So this morning, before we get into the I want to tear the hair out of my head, frustrating and disappointing news that continues to come from the political world, I want to play for you some audio that I caught last night on social media from a guy by the name of Andre Patterson. He's the coach of the Minnesota Vikings. And he had some things to say yesterday about the opportunities that are out there and how we need to be better. We need to be better for our kids to show them that, you know what, even though you might not have this or come from this side of the neighborhood, that with some love, some support, particularly for a child, this belief that no matter what your circumstances, that if you have the right mindset, no matter what you've seen or what you've experienced, you still have the ability to change your situation, and people will follow those sorts of leaders. Let's listen in.
Well, I'll never feel that way, and I think it's because of where I grew up and how I grew up. You know, I'm from Richmond, California, and during the time I was growing up there, it was the murder capital of the world, of the United States. And so I've seen some things that are pretty terrible, from elementary school to middle school to high school to junior college. And I know if you put in the time and you put in the effort and you keep fighting and you never give up, that you have a chance to bring other people along. And things get better and better over time. It never changes overnight. It's always a constant struggle, okay? But I'm standing in front of you today, and I guarantee you, when I was in high school, you never would have thought that would have happened, okay? But my mom stayed on me. I was fortunate to have coaches that backed me, and saw for me to see that there's a different way of living life. And that's what it's about, is to show these young men and women out there that there is hope, and they do have a chance to be better. And what they're living in and what they're seeing isn't all that life is about, and they do have a chance to succeed. You see, if I don't believe that I'm going to live past 21 or 25, then I don't have a problem taking from you what I want from you, because I'm only going to live to 21, 22, 25. But when I know I have a future, and a future sitting in front of me, then I'm willing to fight to make myself better. And that's what we got to go out as a society and a community to show these young people that you do have a chance to succeed. You might not have what you want right now, but if you're willing to pay the price, you're willing to get an education, and you're willing to make yourself better, the world's open to you. The world's open to you, but they got to hear that message. And they got to hear that message from people that look like me and our players. You see what I'm saying? And so I'm never going to give that up. I'm never going to think that it's over because bad things happen. I'm never going to believe that, because I know things can be better.
Knowing that, I think that the persistence of that message goes a long way. When you have things that happen like this, and it seems that it's going to take a little bit more time for some people to get it than others, how do you approach it?
I think you just keep swinging. You know, you keep trying to get in front of kids. You keep trying. You know, it starts with the youth. And if we can keep getting in front of them and keep showing them that there is a way, and then it continues to build and build and build. You know, my son had a better life because of what I was able to do. My son and daughter, okay? My grandson is going to have a better life because of that, okay? My sister and my niece have a better life because they saw me succeed. So my sister said, you know what, I can go to college too. If Andre did it, then I know I can do it. Okay, I have cousins that are exactly the same way. I was the first one to graduate from college. So the thing that ends up happening is, as long as that continues to grow and grow and grow, things get better over time. You can't change something overnight that's been this way forever. And as soon as we get frustrated and give up and say, we can't change it, we just give up, we've ruined our society. We've ruined the United States. That's why we're supposed to have the greatest country in the world, right? Because opportunity's there for everybody. But you have to show people that that opportunity exists, because in your community, you do not see that opportunity. That's the thing, right? I can say this is the greatest country in the world, but I go home and I'm starving. There's nothing in my refrigerator, okay? I got no heat. I don't have a coat. I starve when I go to school. I have no lunch, okay? Well, I'm going to fight to survive. I'm going to do what I got to do to survive, unless somebody shows me that there's another way to survive other than me jacking you and taking your stuff. You feel me? So that's what we have to do, all of us, if we want to make change. That's what we have to do, because it starts with the young people.
That's Andre Patterson of the Minnesota Vikings. He's the head coach, and he was in front of the media yesterday. Question was asked about things in this chaotic world that are playing out, he used his personal experience as yet again another shining example as to why. Well, even in the roughest and toughest of circumstances in this country, that there are opportunities there with a little guidance, a little mentorship, a little support, which first and foremost starts with a unit at home guiding you and trying to show you that there is a way, and it may not come tomorrow or the day after, but that if you put in the work, you keep your nose to the grindstone, opportunities will present themselves and good things will happen. And oftentimes we start this program off with the frustrating and the disappointing news and the news that gets you riled up. And in many cases, we need to, of course, highlight some of those things. Because in many instances, supposedly the quote-unquote leaders are the ones who make decisions that lead us to disappointment and frustration. And again, this idea that there is some big centralized group thought in the way in which we can all sing Kumbaya and be together and live in this utopia is a big crock of you-know-what. That we have our own individual talents, and no matter what you look like, where you come from, with the chips in your favor or stacked against you. We need more people like Andre Patterson speaking to our young people and delivering messages of hope and opportunity than what you hear day to day from particularly our political class, this idea of let's stir the pot and divide. And we'll get into plenty of that as we move through the show, as we typically do here this morning. But to piggyback off of the conversations yesterday that we wrapped up our program with from people like Richard Battle, who laid out the differences between leadership and what we often see from those in charge. When we talk with people like Gerard Newkirk and his wife from Genesis Block, trying to inspire entrepreneurs and the next generation, and how we can provide them some hope, particularly in a time where it seems like the world is falling all around us. We look at the things that are going on within our schools and the influence that social media has over our young minds. And the inability for, of course, even those within the schools to have those candid and frank conversations just to protect their own hide. This is why we wanted to kick off the program here this morning with commentary from what real leadership looks like. We're 20 minutes past the hour here on the Big Talker FM. If you'd like to join in on the show, our call-in number is 910-299-7535.
First things first, I'ma say all the words inside my head. I'm fired up and tired of the way that things have been. Oh, ooh, the way that things have been. Oh, ooh. my CEO. Ooh, the master of my CEO.
Hey, this is Matt Ham, co-founder of Uprint Faith and Personal Development. Join us for Wake Up Our Faith, a real conversation about living out your faith between Sundays, streaming live every Wednesday at 11 a.m. on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Catch the replay every Saturday and Sunday at 8 a.m. on Wilmington's Big Talker 106.7 FM. Stop by and visit us on the web at uprint.life.
Hi, this is Justin Humphreys from the Humphreys Law Firm on Eastwood Road. The Humphreys Law Firm is located in Lumina Station, Wilmington, North Carolina. Practices civil litigation, intellectual property, commercial, and residential real estate. Please give us a call at 910-332-0721 or visit us on our website, which is www.humphreysfirm.law. You can also listen to me every Thursday from 6 to 7 p.m. on the Big Talker 106.7 FM.
Here, Tom Goolsby on the Joe Catenacci Show.
People with common sense know that the entire theory of socialism is one big lie.
The Big Talker 106.7 FM.
Hey everyone, Ben Hawkins here with Cross Country Mortgage. Rates are still at historic lows, and there has never been a better time to purchase your dream home or refinance your existing. With over 300 loan products including conventional, FHA, VA, USDA, renovation, and jumbo, we are certain we have the right loan product for you and your family. Call me today to be pre-qualified to make the offer on your next dream home. 910-352-3373 or visit my website at lendwithben.com.
O'Leary's Automotive Repair has multiple locations in the area in Hampstead, Leland, the Myrtle Grove area, Ogden, and Wrightsboro. O'Leary's Automotive Repair, a trusted, locally owned business since 2006.
I'm Rob Renz, Marine Corps veteran, entrepreneur, and local business owner. Join me and my buddies on Monday from 6 to 7 for Signal Fire Radio, where we discuss how to successfully transition from the military and become a signal fire in your community. That's Signal Fire Radio, Mondays from 6 to 7 p.m. on 106.7 The Big Talk.
Shiver in the dark, it's raining in the park, but meantime, sound of the river, you stop and you hold everything.
All right, so we wanted to start the show off on maybe a glass half full way of looking at things this morning. And now I'll bring you the rest of the news for the next little while, as State Senator Michael Lee is scheduled to join the program just after 8 o'clock today. Budget negotiations are continuing between Governor Cooper and those within leadership roles inside the North Carolina General Assembly. We are one of the few states across the country that still does not have a budget in place for the fiscal year that is already in progress. Senate Leader Phil Berger told reporters last week that legislative officials up in Raleigh received a budget counteroffer from Governor Cooper, and now they've been working on a counteroffer of their own in response. So that continues up in Raleigh as the legislative session continues, a marathon session. We'll get thoughts from our local state senator, Michael Lee of New Hanover County. We'll also talk about the redistricting process that is underway and some of the other nuggets that Senator Lee has been working on during, again, this session up at the North Carolina General Assembly. So a little legislative update from Raleigh coming your way here in about 35 minutes. So as I was wrapping up the show last night, as I helped produce Mark Markley's program on Wednesday, Recovering Hope, which was, its own little fiasco for myself as I rolled up, a few minutes past 6 o'clock, and as I was in the car in traffic on the way here, I had to talk Mark through getting the show up and running was like 3 minutes late, but when you're in radio time, 3 minutes late could seem like a lifetime when there's nothing coming out over the air, as you alert us to here whenever there is some programming issues or errors that occur. But Mark did a bang-up job, by the way, and somehow, some way, I was able to talk him through getting the video stream up along with the audio, and he knocked it out of the park. But nonetheless, as I was wrapping up his show last night around 7 o'clock, I got a text from our friend Andrew Donaldson, who often fills in for us here as a guest host, and we talk with him and some of his colleagues at Ordinary Times Magazine, including my buddy Johnny McCumber, who's a cybersecurity expert. But Andrew texted me and said, listen, I want to jump on tomorrow because I don't know, if you saw the president's comments yesterday. He gave a speech, apparently, where he told us not to worry. Do not fret. We're going to help alleviate the situation at our ports and the supply chain issues. And we're going to do that by opening the ports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And then made his statement and quickly did the about face. Back into the White House. This has become commonplace, of course, and we could all imagine what that would be like if there was someone else in charge, particularly with an R next to their name, particularly with a Trump at the end of their name, if that was the way of life for 3 years in the way Donald Trump approached, the media. Like him or not, you always kind of knew where Donald Trump stood on the issues, and he had no problem engaging with the media after making statements unlike what we have now as our quote-unquote leader. So we have a supply chain crisis, and the bright idea is that we're going to open the ports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Has nothing to do, of course, with the worker shortages, the issues with finding the necessary truck drivers to carry out what needs to be done to get things moving when it comes to commerce. When we talk about the West Coast, particularly out in Long Beach, where there's a massive port, in Los Angeles, of course, has nothing to do with the fact that California in particular has certain laws that prevent certain types of trucks from entering the port and moving cargo due to all the different regulations, restrictions, and laws that are enacted in the Golden State. It has nothing to do with any of that. Just listen. Hey, we've got everything under control, according to Joe Biden. Let's just open the ports up 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There'll be less traffic on the roadways. This was the pitch he made to the American people as you head to the grocery store and see empty shelves, as you struggle to get any sort of product in on time. Well, the Florida governor, of course, has responded to that and said, hey, listen, Governor DeSantis, who has no problem, again, getting in front of a camera and addressing the media, firing back when he hears some of the ridiculousness that we often hear when there's a Republican in charge. Somehow, some way, all of that pushback and quote-unquote accountability gets lost when there's a Democrat in office. We're just calling it the way we see it here. Well, the world is ending. Democracy as we know it is over when there's a Republican making a push or setting an agenda. When a Democrat does it, well, the world is going to be saved. Just to allow the government to take over more control. Well, the governor of Florida says, hey, come here to the state of Florida where businesses flourish. We can do what California can do or can't do because they're too inept and stupid to do it. Now, of course, that may have been tongue-in-cheek, given that, with massive cargo ships in the Pacific Ocean to try and get to the ports of Florida, logistically would be a nightmare and would cost, massive amounts of money to do so. But nonetheless, stirring the pot, Governor DeSantis, and utilizing a time to score political points. And that's one of the things that if you say anything in criticism towards Donald Trump, Governor DeSantis has a way that's a bit more polished and a bit more politically savvy than just kind of the cutthroat, here it is, take it or leave it approach that we had from, President Trump. And that's not to say that approach wasn't one that was refreshing to many in the country. It also turned a lot of people off as well. Well, maybe in order to immediately get into America, maybe the thousands of cargo ships that are off the coasts of our country, maybe they should just start unloading their goods at the Texas border. Bam! Supply chain issues resolved.
Dana Lash.
You would rather have too much freedom to deal with, and that includes the freedom and the responsibility of making sure that your rights are protected, than too little. Imagine not having any of these rights. And then, you'd have more time on your hands probably, because the state wouldn't allow you to go out and make sure you could defend rights that no longer existed, because we would live under tyranny. So you'll always have this.
The Dana Show.
3 to 6 p.m. only on the Big Talker FM.
Government has become too big, too overtaxing, and is constantly overregulating every aspect of your life.
If you agree with that, tune in to Consumer Choice Radio every Saturday at 10 a.m. here on the Big Talker 106.7 FM with me, Yael Osowski.
And me, David Clement. For an hour, you'll get expert analysis on what the government is sinking its teeth into next, and how you, as a consumer, can push back.
ConsumerChoiceRadio.com.
Hey, this is Matt Ham, co-founder of Uprint Faith and Personal Development. Join myself and Kevin Adams every Saturday and Sunday from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. on Wilmington's Big Talker for a fun, uplifting conversation about the upside of upside-down living.
If you're anywhere near Oak Island, come check out Seaside Jewelers at 8801 East Oak Island Drive. They're on Oak Island. You're going to find the latest in Oak Island lighthouses, nautical charms, pendants. You're going to find bracelets, turtle charms, anything in the jewelry genre you need, you can get there. And if they don't have it, they'll find a way to get it for you. Come check out Seaside Jewelers at 8801 East Oak Island Drive. And if you tell them you heard it on the Big Talker FM, an extra 10% off your purchase, but only at Seaside Jewelers, 8801 East Oak Island Drive. The lowest prices in town. Come check us out today.
Tune in on Friday mornings to hear The Construction Connection, a collaborative effort between Joe Catenacci with the Big Talker FM and Cameron Moore, the executive officer of the Wilmington Cape Fear Home Builders Association. You start the conversation and we bring you the answers as we take a regional, in-depth look at growth-related topics and issues centered around the residential and commercial development and building industry. The Construction Connection, Friday mornings on the Big Talker FM.
In New Orleans, they call the rising sun, and it's been the ruin of many a poor boy. In God, I know I'm one.
All right, as we move through the first hour of our show, as mentioned, State Senator Michael Lee will join us to kick off hour number 2. We'll also hear from Andrew Donaldson of Ordinary Times Magazine. And of course, veteran to our country and fills in as a guest host from time to time here on the Show and also a writer at Ordinary Times. Prior to all of this, he worked in transportation and logistics and has some reaction that he'd like to give today in about 1 hour from now surrounding, well, what we heard yesterday spewing out of the mouth of our commander-in-chief. This, of course, came after the White House press secretary was questioned on, well, the rising costs of pretty much anything that you consume on a day-to-day basis. And as one of the responses rounded out yesterday during the news briefing from 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, she told us that we all understand the American people are not looking at cost-to-cost comparisons from this year to 2 years ago. I'm like, what world is this woman living in? Boy, she knows how to spin a turd. And, of course, well, we pay attention to this kind of stuff. And at one point, we were running an ongoing 86 list coming from the restaurant industry as I worked in many different restaurants and bars through through college and in my early 20s. You know, the 86 list that the chef or the cook or someone in the kitchen would put up right where you grab the food so you can tell the patrons that, we're out of this or that. Well, now you go to a restaurant, and that's commonplace. Many restaurant owners having to amend their menus on an almost daily basis because they can't get this or that on time. And then you go to the various stores, and you notice the empty shelves. I mean, for myself, on a daily basis, it's like you make a daily trip to the grocery store. It's kind of well, it used to be a trip for me that gave you kind of a sense of, all right, relax. We got food around us, great abundance and choice. And now you're rolling through, aisles and they're empty, and you're just trying to, fight your neighbor for the last 12 pack of Capri Sun juice boxes for your kid. But according to the White House and within the, the elite circles of Washington D.C., I'm sure who still have, their high price, top shelf spirits, and no problem getting that T-bone steak to the table in the ritzy restaurants. But for you and me, of course, living on the ground day to day, we don't really pay attention to what things cost from one year to the next. I'm sure many of you will be heading to the petrol station a little later on and notice that, well, $30 of gas doesn't get what it did last year. Or an experience from over the weekend, as I made mention of here through this week. You go to the store and you want to cook up some cheesesteaks on the flat top, and 6 peppers and 10 rolls and 12 slices of pre-cut cheese, maybe a 12-pack. It costs you $60. But never mind that. We don't really pay attention to that sort of stuff. So we've got inflation, we've got supply chain issues. Let's spend more money. That's the government's approach right now under, both Democrats and Republicans. And the White House now apparently has talked to U.S. oil and gas producers to discuss the rising prices and what the industry can do to mitigate that. Well, we are old enough to remember on January, what was it, 21st of this year, when Joseph Biden was inaugurated as President of the United States, one of his first major executive orders that he signed was, of course, to end the construction after this 10-year project. It was up and rolling with our neighbors to the north, something known as the Keystone XL pipeline. Well, that was immediately shut down, canceling, not only an effort to get oil from areas in Canada down to the refineries on the Gulf in a more efficient and affordable way. Also canceling thousands of jobs, good paying jobs in an area in the country that doesn't necessarily have that sort of economic activity. On day one, canceled the Keystone Pipeline. And 9 months later, well, the White House is now talking with U.S. oil and gas producers to discuss the rising price in oil and gas and what the industry can do to mitigate it. More locally, of course, we had a pipeline that was, online to bring natural gas from the underground areas in West Virginia down through Southwest Virginia and into the Tar Heel State along the I-95 corridor, providing another access point through the Mid-Atlantic and into the South that could have helped alleviate in the future when things get jammed up or things slow down, an opportunity to tap into it here more locally. Canceled, of course, due to the massive hurdles and hoops that, Old Dominion and Duke Energy were having to go through because of all of the lawsuits and impact studies that got things tied up so far to the point that they said, you know what, it's just not worth it. So on day one, the president, of course, signs this executive order canceling a pipeline that had been in the making for decades, and here we are 9 months later. But nothing to see here. We don't pay attention to that sort of stuff. We're just a bunch of rubes here in America that don't pay attention to the cost of things from year to year or from this year to 2 years ago. Yet everything and anything that you purchase today has skyrocketed. Well, one, due to the mishandling and the government overreach, it would shut down the economy. And two, these ridiculous ideas that have been introduced into the mainstream by those in charge in Washington, D.C. So again, we'll hear from Andrew Donaldson a little while from now. Worked in transportation and logistics and has some thoughts on what the President of the United States had to say yesterday. State Senator Michael Lee also with us here in about 20 minutes. Keeping in the state here of North Carolina today, this from CBS 17 up in the Raleigh area. A group of 118 first responders and other City of Raleigh employees have hired an attorney to fight the city's new COVID employment mandate. They are calling it discriminatory. Attorney James Lawrence represents 53 police officers, 44 firefighters, and 7 City of Raleigh employees who are unvaccinated. Under the city's new mandate, getting a promotion now hinges on getting the jab. The attorney says, hey, listen, we've got working class people who've been told by the city that if they want to get promoted, they need to get the vaccine. We think this fundamentally violates the city's own stated goals of equity and inclusion, providing employment opportunities for all people. The group of first responders and city employees recently formed a group called the City of Raleigh Freedom to Choose Coalition, made up of a diverse group of people on both sides of the political aisle who believe this is more about personal choice rather than anti-vaccine or anti-science. And our clients believe wholeheartedly, of course, that this is and has been a significant public health issue. But let's be clear. In regards to the new promotion rules, well, Duke Law professor Dan Bowling believes that tying vaccination status to promotions is somewhat illogical in his mind. Well, he says, I can understand more easily termination, quite frankly, than promotions, which are traditionally based on merit and or seniority. Well, the city, of course, of Raleigh has not yet responded to this decision by 118 first responders and other City of Raleigh employees who are now fighting back against the city's new COVID-19 employment mandate. That's just one of many stories that we're going to continue to see pop up across the country as these different levels of government and different situations play out where these mandate deadlines start to approach. I mean, you're hearing all this noise, and who knows what's true when it comes to the airlines and what happened, the debacle out at Southwest over the weekend, and other industries that are pushing these mandates. We've seen what's happened within professional sports, particularly the NBA. Well, there's at least one NBA player that stood by his word. His name's Kyrie Irving with the Brooklyn Nets. He's like, listen, I'm in line to lose $17 million. I'm not getting the jab. He continues to receive pushback from his organization and the league, of course, for his personal choice. You wonder if more people are going to start jumping on that sort of bandwagon and saying, listen, I'm willing to give up certain things because of what you're telling me I need to do, supposedly for the betterment of myself. Don't know if you caught the Joe Rogan podcast. The CNN medical doctor, Sanjay Gupta, somehow, some way got roped into talking with Joe Rogan on his podcast. And if you ever listened to Rogan, I mean, he's just, and given that he has this unique platform, this podcasting way of things, nothing's off the table and anything goes. And he's like, listen, your news agency over there, after I got diagnosed with COVID, basically telling flat out lies about what I was doing to mitigate the symptoms. And why and how can you support something like that? Dr. Gupta, was trying to get around from his knee to his, his rear end to his elbow there, and couldn't necessarily, give Joe an answer that appeased him. So he kept pushing back. He said, "Listen, you were telling people that I was taking a horse dewormer and spreading all sorts of falsehoods about what I did in the early stages of dealing with COVID and how quickly I was able to get those symptoms under control based on, well, my medical doctor's approach. And that was, of course, to beef me up with all sorts of antibiotics and drugs that have been around for centuries." He talked about this ivermectin. He talked about, getting the antibodies, Mr. Rogan did. And what do you know, early on, as many have been trying to get this point across for many months now, to the chagrin of those with the power in many instances. Well, it was, don't do any sort of thing like that. Just stay in your home and keep the muzzle on. Which, again, brings us back to the point that we've been trying to make, again, for about 18 months. And why is it that with any other sort of virus or infection or disease, why is it that the first thing doctors do is find ways to help mitigate the pain, mitigate the symptoms? But with COVID, not so much. And again, early on, okay, we have an understanding. This is new. We don't necessarily have all the information or the facts. So let's take precautions. And even still now, 18, 19 months later, only now are certain political officials and even medical professionals starting to speak up and speak out about the different remedies that can be used early on in the COVID diagnosis that, well, one, of course, prevent hospitalization and death, and in many instances, alleviate those symptoms within a 24, 36-hour time period. But why? Why has it taken so long for our political class and even some within the medical world to embrace that? Despite any other sort of circumstance that we've seen in modern history when it comes to viruses and diseases. Why? I think we all know why. But don't dare say something like that, because you may soon be censored, or who knows who may be showing up at your door to take a look at what you do day to day. All right, when we get back, we'll bring some news from the area here locally. Yesterday, we learned that the 15-year-old who allegedly shot and injured a student at New Hanover High School a couple months ago, he'll be tried as an adult in New Hanover County Superior Court. Of course, we haven't heard much since initially learning about who this 15-year-old was and some of the circumstances that led to him bringing a gun to school to take care of some unsettled business based on, well, what we've learned was a pretty rough time period for this kid because of the bullying, because of multiple times getting his head kicked in by others, even some on school grounds who were not, in fact, students at New Hanover High School. Haven't heard much since then surrounding the parents and their claim that the kid's been bullied, the school wasn't doing enough. Again, when you get to the point where you need to bring a gun to school, you're not going to win a lot of sympathy from the general public. But nonetheless, this is, what we're seeing becoming fairly common, not only, of course, within the local school district, but all over the country. We had another incident down in Texas not too long ago. And what do you know? Story surfaces on WWAI TV3 last night of a parent expressing concerns that the administration is not doing enough to shield students from bullying after this woman's daughter went through the proper channels to try and get help, but was still bullied and beaten up, now on a video that is circulating on social media from one of the high schools. So, okay, we criticize the 15-year-old for making the decision to bring a gun to school and trying to settle business after getting his teeth kicked in multiple times, getting suspended from school and then unsuspended because, well, after further investigation, they found out the kid was jumped by somebody who doesn't even go to the school. So now, not the first parent to recently express their concerns with the administrative state within the school system. And by the way, never mind the last 20 or so years that has led to lawsuits, arrests, and jail time. Nothing to see here. We'll get into the story as to what this young girl went through. Video circulating now on social media, getting bullied and beat up. Though, according to her mom, well, she told the proper authorities, and, well, according to them, they've done nothing to help stop this. And you wonder why many people have lost faith within this broken system. All right, we're going to get into it after we hit the top, or we get back from this break. Moving up into the top of the hour, of course, State Senator Michael Lee going to join us just after 8 o'clock.
I'm State Farm Agent Rob Renz, and I want to help you get to a better state. We are one of the fastest growing and most reviewed insurance agencies in Wilmington. That's because our customers love the personalized attention that we give to you. Let us help you get to a better state by visiting our website at ilminsurance.com. That's ilminsurance.com. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
This is Chad Adams, president of Red Wolf Broadcasting, proud to announce our fall lineup starting October of 2021. From 7 to 10 a.m., we have Joe Catenacci covering all of the local issues of the day and looking at some of the national things that are happening. Then Mike Gallagher, one of America's longest-running talk show hosts, from 10 to noon. From noon to 3 p.m., we have the up-and-coming Clay Travis and Buck Sexton. You're going to love that show. And then one of the toughest hosts in America, Dana Lash, from 3 to 6 p.m. So join us each and every day, Monday through Friday, here on the Big Talker FM.
Folks, we all know ongoing road construction and traffic can weigh heavy on your vehicle. Since 2006, O'Leary's Automotive Repair has provided comprehensive repair services at affordable prices to get you back on the road in no time. Their ASE certified technicians will help you find a cost-effective repair and maintenance alternatives. O'Leary's has multiple locations in the area in Hampstead, Leland, the Myrtle Grove area, Ogden, and Wrightsboro. O'Leary's Automotive Repair, a trusted, locally owned business since 2006.
Hey, I'm Yael Osowski.
And I'm David Clement.
We're the host of Consumer Choice Radio, broadcasting every Saturday at 10 a.m. here on the Big Talker 106.7 FM.
Consumer Choice Radio is a weekly conversation featuring the latest news, interviews, and expert analysis that covers consumer topics from around the world.
ConsumerChoiceRadio.com.
Wake up to Good Morning Carolina, weekdays at 5:30 a.m.
And good morning, Carolina. It is a very busy news morning today. I'm Donna Gregory.
And I'm Jeff Rivenbark. We're glad you're starting your Tuesday with us.
Be prepared and ready to go for the day ahead.
For the time being, we are dry and quiet, but we are dealing with some patchy fog.
And catch up with the overnight news you need to know before heading out the door.
We'll have more details and more live coverage in just a few moments.
Get up early for Good Morning Carolina, weekdays at 5:30 a.m.
Some parents of students in New Hanover County schools are worried the administration is not doing enough to shield students from bullying. And, I get it. In some instances, we're in a way different time than the way you and I grew up, where, things were settled, in the back of the schoolyard at 3 o'clock. The old-fashioned way. Well, those days are long gone, of course, as we can see, with incidents occurring on a daily basis, and even right here in our own backyard not too long ago. Well, one woman's daughter attends Laney High School and says her daughter went through all the proper channels to get some help and was still bullied and beaten up, and now there's a video circulating on social media that shows that. She expects, when she sends her kids to school, that, they should be secure and safe. And today was not a safe place for my child. So daughter goes home, tells her mom and her husband that two girls had threatened her, and the mom does what a good mom does, says, hey, we'll tell somebody in the school. The family, the daughter, they speak with the administration, the principal about the threats, the bullying. Took every effort to get help from the administrators, and she still got beat up. And now watching the video, watching her child get threatened and then beaten up by several girls not far from the school office, the administrative office, the office right down the hall where she had just left asking for help. Of course, New Hanover County Schools, along with, the system as a whole, they'll always hide behind, the laws and the different, talking points. Well, but we train our teachers and students on how to report bullying. So you're pointing the finger now at, a lack of training? Watching the video of the fight at Laney High School, she says, she couldn't help but imagine how things could have went different if her daughter was more immediately protective. Or what if her daughter decided that she was going to take things in her own hands like another 15-year-old at New Hanover? Well, another story, another headache, once again, being showcased within the broken system, which just reiterates This idea that there should be more choice and more options for our kids when it comes to their education.
Keeping Oak Island informed. The Big Talker 106.7 FM WFBT, Carolina Beach.
More frequently in the midst of the supply chain meltdown, where is Transportation Secretary Buttigieg? We haven't heard from him lately, at least not on issues relating to the supply chain crisis. The White House blames private industry and not government policy for the trouble. President Biden saying that steps are being taken to correct the situation.
The Port of Los Angeles announced that it's going to begin operating 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. This follows the Port of Long Beach's commitment to 24/7 that it announced just weeks ago.
Negotiations drag on between the White House and congressional Democrats in hopes of getting a compromise on a multi-trillion-dollar spending bill. A Danish man accused of killing 5 people in a bow and arrow attack in a small Norwegian town. Police say the suspect, a Muslim convert, previously flagged as having been radicalized.
Witnesses spoke of a man standing on a corner with arrows in a quiver on his shoulder and a bow in his hand. Images on social media show arrows stuck in the wooden walls of houses. People ran for their lives as police blocked off the scene.
The BBC's Charles Haviland. California firefighters managing to keep the fast-moving Alisol fire away from former President Reagan's ranch northwest of Santa Barbara.
We expect that for weeks you will see, if not months, you'll see fire crews out there putting out hot spots on this fire.
Santa Barbara County Fire Chief Mark Hartwig telling KEYT that blaze has charred more than 15,000 acres. Checking Wall Street, Dow futures up 258 points. NASDAQ futures 140 points higher. More on these stories at townhall.com.
Tell me why Relief Factor is so successful in lowering or eliminating pain. I'm often asked that question. Pete and Seth Talbot, the father and son founders of Relief Factor, tell me they believe our bodies were designed to heal. The doctors who formulated Relief Factor selected the 4 best ingredients, 100% drug-free ingredients that each help your body deal with inflammation. Order the 3-week quick start now. Discount it to only $19.95 to see if it will work for you too. Call 800-500-8384. ReliefFactor.com.
Angie's List is now Angie, and getting your to-do list done just got easier. Between back to school and with the holidays around the corner, it can feel like there's no time to tackle home projects. Whether you need help with emergency repairs or major upgrades, Angie matches you with top local pros who can get the job done right. Browse reviews, see upfront pricing, and instantly book hundreds of projects. Save time for what matters most. Book your next project at Angie.com. That's ANGI.com.
The death toll from a fire in southern Taiwan that engulfed a building overnight has risen to 46, according to officials who say at least another 41 people were injured.
The fire broke out in the middle of the night. Some heard a loud explosion. It took firefighters 4 hours to bring it under control. Residents, some of them old, some with disabilities, were trapped in their homes in the upper part of the 13-storey building. The lower section used to house restaurants, karaoke bars and a cinema, but they've long since been abandoned. Firefighters said piles of unused items blocked access to the building, making the rescue operation more difficult.
The BBC's Michael Bristow. At least 3 people dead, many more injured during a protest in Beirut by Hezbollah and its allies against the lead judge probing last year's massive explosion in the city's port. The exchange of fire involved snipers, pistols, and rocket-propelled grenades. News and analysis at townhall.com. Facebook expanding harassment guidelines with the goal of protecting public figures, including politicians and celebrities.
Under the new policies, Facebook will bar content that degrades or sexualizes public figures, mirroring existing policies covering private individuals. In addition, Facebook is adding protections for government dissidents, journalists, and human rights activists around the world. The changes come a week after former Facebook data scientist Frances Haugen told Congress,
"The company's leadership knows how to make Facebook and Instagram safer, but won't make the necessary changes because they have put their astronomical profits before people."
I'm Mike Gracia.
Disaster response officials in the Philippines say that a tropical storm has left at least 19 people dead. The storm triggering landslides, flash flooding as it barreled over the northern tip of the Asia-Pacific islands. Once again on Wall Street, Dow futures up 261. Townhall.com.
The champ is here!
tell you something you already know. The world ain't all sunshine and rainbows. It's a very mean and nasty place, and I don't care how tough you are, it will beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it. You, me, or nobody is gonna hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done.
When the moon hits your eye like a big pizza pie, that's amore. When the world seems to shine like you've had too much wine, that's amore.
Back here for another hour on the Big Talker FM. Gorgeous morning here across southeastern North Carolina. Sunshine on the horizon, another day of warm temperatures. It'll feel a bit more like fall as you move through the weekend, but nonetheless, still some great weather for the next few months, well, year-round, let's be honest, particularly for people that come maybe from the western part of North Carolina or elsewhere around the country. I mean, 50 and balmy for your winter is not too shabby. We've had a marathon legislative session ongoing up in Raleigh within the North Carolina General Assembly. Still work to be done as budget negotiations continue now between some of the leadership within the General Assembly and Governor Cooper's office. We've got redistricting that continues with the legislative maps being drawn. A few projections have been released over the last couple of days as far as what those districts will look like moving into the midterms of 2022. Of course, because so many people want to live, work, and play in this destination state, North Carolina over the last 10 years has garnered enough of a population surge to add another congressional seat to its delegation. So this all playing out in Raleigh right now, and to provide us a legislative update, our state senator from New Hanover County, Michael Lee, is with us. Senator Lee, it's a pleasure, my friend, as always, and I hope all is well on your end.
All is well. Good morning. And you're right. It's a beautiful one here in Wilmington.
All right. So tell me, why is North Carolina one of the only states in the union that has yet to put forth a budget and a spending plan for the fiscal year that is already underway?
Well, we're trying really hard to work with the governor so we can have a budget this year. As you know, we haven't had one for several years. And the governor, I don't think, has ever signed a budget that the General Assembly has put forth since he's been in office. We overturned a veto in the first biennium, and then in the last biennium, we didn't have a budget, as you know. So we're working pretty hard to see if we can get a budget that he'd be willing to sign.
Now, with that said, the governor, of course, what was it, the last cycle, he drew that sort of line in the sand and was pushing, Medicaid for all or an expansion, and that's despite all of the reports that come out of, the auditor's office showcasing that, the Medicaid program as is broken at best, totally a waste of money when it comes to, some of the, not a waste of money for the care and the, what it provides to certain groups of people in our state, but the fact that the program itself is ripe with, fraud and abuse, and at the tune of $100 million, it seems like year after year. So I'm not sure why that portion of the conversation never gets brought up when we talk about Medicaid expansion in our state, and that why add on to an already broken sort of system.
Yeah, and when Medicaid expansion came up years ago, we had not gone through the transformation process. As you know, Republicans have put a plan in place years ago to transform Medicaid from a fee-for-service program to what's called a capitated plan program, which kind of incentivizes overall health follow-up and outcomes versus charging for individual fees. That transformation is actually in process now. We put a reserve fund in place starting, I think it's been 5-6 years ago, and it built that up so that it could transition, and we're in the middle of that transition now. So I do think that we're getting better in the way the state's handling Medicaid because of some things that we put in place 6-7 years ago. Although we still, it's not a perfect system right now. We continue to work on it. And, he drew that line in the sand years ago, and it just was not something that could be done at that time.
And there are many other things that are going on within state government right now, the budget being one thing. And as always, education seems to be atop the list. And it is obviously a priority for all of us, despite what you may be told in the mainstream media about you evil Republicans out there and the way you hate education and just want to keep our kids dumbed down and, keep our schools unfunded or, fund in a way that is not, adequate to those who, want to, open up the piggy bank and spend as much as they can without any sort of tangible, results or strings attached to those monies. We do have a lot of money pouring into the state, whether it be from COVID relief, whether it be from the ability to keep, our revenues flowing even during a crazy year of 2020. When we look at education, I know that's been a focus of yours during your time at the General Assembly. Provide us sort of an overview as to where you see public education right now. I know there are a number of, kind of horror stories that are coming out because of, to me, a year of being told to, sit in front of a screen and stay home. I think a lot of that is starting to come home to roost, whether it be from proficiency to behavioral issues, and the list goes on and on and on.
Yeah, I mean, there are a number of issues. First you hear about the Leandro decision. Leandro was where the Supreme Court ruled back in 1997, and I think again in 2004, that the state constitution had an obligation to ensure that children have access to a sound basic education. Absolutely. And you hear Leandro recited over and over again. And, Leandro, the kid at that time, is now one of the lawyers on the case. He's in his 40s now. And, what has happened is that the court has brought on a special master, a consultant that is trying to tell the General Assembly how to spend the education dollars. The Republican General Assembly since 2013 has increased education spending dramatically every single year, not just in per capita spending, but in teacher salaries have gone up every single year. We've gone from, being in the bottom few states in the country to I think we're now in probably around 30. I haven't looked at the most recent statistics. And we're still climbing as we go on. Some of the issues that we're kind of facing are completely divorced from that history, though, because of the pandemic. And it's something we're facing not just in North Carolina, but across the country. And that's the education lag, I guess, is the best way to put it, because of the pandemic, combined with a lot of the mental health issues that we're seeing resulting from children being somewhat isolated for over a year now. So those are things that are challenging. There's been a massive amount of federal funds, billions and billions of dollars coming down directly to school districts. Some of that money has come through the General Assembly where we've appropriated it through DPI, but the lion's share has gone directly to school districts. I mean, think of Robeson County, that has received over $100 million in the last 12 months directly from the federal government. They didn't ask for it, but they're trying to develop a spending plan to utilize those funds in the best interest of children. And then that's what you've got going on all across the state. New Hanover County's received significant funding directly. And again, on a state level, we're working on programs to help remediate a lot of those particular issues. One thing that we've done, irrespective of the pandemic, is called the Science of Learning that we're implementing, which is a reading curriculum to help our children to be able to read by grade 3. It's a proven, evidence-based system, bipartisan, House, Senate, Republicans, Democrats, the governor, the superintendent, the state board. We've all signed on, and we've put a lot of dollars behind it in the budget. And I think we'll see some real results from that as we move forward with our third grade reading average.
State Senator Michael Lee is with us here this morning on the Big Talker FM, giving us a legislative update from Raleigh as the session continues within the North Carolina General Assembly. Right now, the budget negotiations and the redistricting process, I would say, are the top two items that are garnering the most attention. Senator Lee, when we talk about redistricting, we all kind of know, the way the process has played out in years past. Expect lawsuits, expect this to be tied up in the courts. I mean, when your political opponents are already announcing these sorts of tactics before any maps are even released, It seems to me that it just feels like this process gets extremely political really quickly, and at the end of the day, it creates much uncertainty when it comes to the electorate and their ability to get an understanding on how this sort of process works.
Yeah, I mean, right now so there are a number of state and federal court cases that really govern kind of the rules on how redistricting works. And we have a state constitution, obviously, that says that the legislature draws the districts, but the court cases through the years really kind of put forth a set of guardrails to where you can only do but so many things. That was not the case before 2010. There were some federal cases and some state cases, but a lot of the rules around redistricting have evolved through the court system, and in particular the state court system, over the last probably 8 to 10 years. I'm not on the redistricting committee, but I know that there's been a lot of things put out there by nonprofit organizations on what are called county groupings. I think there was one put out by Duke University. And what that means is that certain counties have to be grouped together. So you're really limited in the way that you can kind of draw the districts. And then, certain rules are there. You can't split up municipalities. That rule was established by the General Assembly itself. So there, a lot of people say we could, legislators can just do whatever they want. And that's just not the case when we go into redistricting. And I think you'll see that the maps from today that are currently in existence, not any new maps that are forthcoming, but the maps of today that we ran on in the last election cycle, look very, even just if you're not looking at anything other than what the maps look like, they look so much more what I would call normal than all the squiggly lines you saw from redistricting that went on previous to Republicans. You can just look at it and tell that it just looks, more compact. Districts look like they're the way they should be, rather than a district being, 20, miles long and 1 mile thin.
Yeah, no doubt. And you can go back, and there are shining examples, particularly when Governor Cooper himself, was in the legislature. His district, in fact, up there in the northeast part of the state, was drawn, very uniquely, we'll say. And there's a lot of course, criticisms towards the Republicans, and this term gerrymandering that is, often thrown around as to, how Republicans are the ones that, are basically, flipping the script and keeping it in a way just so you all can keep the power in Raleigh. But all you have to do, as you said, let's compare some of the maps from back in the day to where we are now. And I think any objective person, an honest person, would say, all right, the approach maybe that's going on right now, which of course is a very open process. There were public hearings in every congressional district leading up to this process. Every redistricting committee meeting is live streamed and open to the public. So anyone and everyone who wants to, see how the process works, has opportune time to do so.
Yeah, it's interesting. There are people, I'm in the legislature, obviously, but I'm not on the redistricting committee. And so I'm not in the meetings, and I'm not, listening to those debates other than, listening to the public hearings. So it's interesting. There's a lot of people that know a lot more than I do because it's so open. People are really following it closely. And I think that's great. But it's just a real interesting process how folks seem to think it's somehow behind closed doors, when in fact it's so incredibly open because they're following essentially the same procedure they did several years ago when they were having to kind of mid-decade do some redistricting because of a court case. And you saw senior Democrats say this has been the best process they've ever seen as far as openness. So I think that continues on today. Again, I'm not on the committee, so I'm not in all those meetings, but there are members of the public, because I see the reporting, where they are in all those meetings. And it's just, it's interesting how wide open it is, and just completely contrary to what people are saying.
State Senator Michael Lee with us here this morning. Senator Lee, is there anything else out there that folks should be privy to here this morning as we get the as we continue this session. And again, budget redistricting getting a lot of attention. But I know even the governor has recently signed energy bill, so to speak, that will roll back greenhouse gas emissions from Duke Energy and overhauling some of that process when it comes to customer rates. Should we be concerned about that bill that has now become law with some Republican support?
It had tremendous Republican support, and in fact, we in the Senate worked on it, quite a bit. I mean, essentially, what it says is that we need to have a pathway to reducing carbon emissions, but in achieving some carbon neutrality by some point in the future without sacrificing reliability, and also utilizing a least cost method. So what that means is that, and the Utilities Commission is really the one that has to develop all these plans, because that's typically where that all occurs. But they have to utilize least cost and not sacrifice reliability. Those two things you don't want to happen. You need to have a reliable grid for not just homeowners, but for industry. And you need to do it without putting it on the backs of the ratepayers for inefficient generation of energy. So those are the two key pieces that I think we need to keep in mind. It's least cost, and it has to be reliable.
State Senator Michael Lee with us here this morning on the Big Talker FM. Senator, it's a pleasure, and thanks again for the update, and I look forward to next month's conversation.
Absolutely. I appreciate it, and y'all have a great day and a great weekend.
And no doubt, looking forward to the weekend, as always, here in the Wilmington area with the beautiful weather on tap. Great to have Senator Lee as a monthly guest in our program to give us some of the insight coming from Raleigh. So we try and do with multiple guests each month, whether it be with our twice-a-month conversation with State Treasurer Dale Falwell or some of the state representatives from around the Cape Fear region, trying to piece together week to week. We get good news from an insight from our elected officials in Raleigh, monthly conversations with those who represent our region and state up in Washington, D.C., with Congressman David Rouser of the 7th District here in North Carolina. We speak with Representative Greg Murphy up the road in the 3rd Congressional District. Senator Tom Tillis has become more of a frequent guest. This has been all part of the blueprint that we've scripted here for the last couple of years to make sure you got all the information you need when it comes to the news of the day and the way in which government operates from the federal level through the state and down here to your city council, your county commission, just trying to provide you that insight and content you get nowhere else. We're 24 minutes past the hour here on The Big Talker, 106.7 FM.
On the first part of the journey, I was looking at all the life. There were plants and birds and rocks and things. There was sand and hills and rain. The first thing I met was a fly with a buzz and the sky with no clouds. The heat was hot and the ground was dry, but the air was full of sound. I've been through the desert on a horse with no name. It felt good to be out of the rain. In the desert, you can remember your name.
Folks, we all know ongoing road construction and traffic can weigh heavy on your vehicle. Since 2006, O'Leary's Automotive Repair has provided comprehensive repair services at affordable prices to get you back on the road in no time. Their ASE certified technicians will help you find a cost-effective repair and maintenance alternatives. O'Leary's has multiple locations in the area in Hampstead, Leland, the Myrtle Grove area, Ogden, and Wrightsboro. O'Leary's Automotive Repair, a trusted, locally owned business since 2006.
Those aren't fireworks. The gang violence here in Wilmington has got to be stopped. As your city councilman, I'll give our law enforcement agencies the direction and support they need to make our streets, ball fields, and schools safe. While doing that, I'll also keep our small businesses open so they can do what they do best, work hard and be profitable. I'm Luke Waddell, I'm running for city council, and I ask for your vote. Paid for by the committee to elect Luke Waddell.
In this corner, bugs. Every creepy, crawly pest that lurks in your home. And in this corner, Bug-No Pest and Termite Control. That's Mr. Bug-No to you, pal. If you have unwanted pests, let Bug-No Pest and Termite Control take the fight to them. Bug-No Pest and Termite Control is a family-owned and operated business, fully licensed and insured, and can handle all of your residential and commercial pest and termite control needs. Rated 5 stars on Angie's List and HomeAdvisor.com. Call 910-367-2501 to give bugs a knockout.
I'm a medical assistant. I'm the first person you see at the doctor's office. I love what I do. I never have the same day twice, and my job is stable, flexible, and important. And I have options. Medical assistants are in demand. I can work in a variety of healthcare settings, including specialty physicians' offices, hospitals, and in any healthcare facility. I'm a role model for my kids and a trusted healthcare professional at work. I got my start at CFCC, and you can too. Visit cfcc.edu/medical assisting and get started today.
I'm K.O. Davis from K.O.'s Coast to Coast Tree, and I want to be your tree man.
When your trees need cut, 2 letters to know. One is a K, the other is an O. K.O.
Tree man.
Proper trimming is the most important thing that you can do, so don't just hire anybody to do it. You need someone that knows what they're doing.
K.O.
Call the professionals at K.O.'s Coast to Coast Tree and visit KOTrees.com.
I am State Farm Agent Rob Renz, and I want to help you get to a better place. Visit us online at ilminsurance.com. That's ilminsurance.com. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Here, Tom Goolsby on the Joe Catenacci Show.
People with common sense know that the entire theory of socialism is one big lie.
The Big Talker 106.7 FM.
As Wilmington's leader in restorative and regenerative medicine, the Frank Institute specializes in health optimization. Simply put, we use in-depth evaluations and lab testing to determine the best treatments for each patient. So whether you're suffering from an unseen hormonal imbalance or a simple vitamin deficiency, the Frank Institute is ready to get you back to better living. Call us at 910-679-8534 or fill out our symptom survey online at frankinstitute.com. Because at the Frank Institute, you live, we help.
Step inside, walk this way, you and me, babe. Hey, hey!
All right, if you want to jump in, we've got some time between now and our next guest. Andrew Donaldson will be calling in on the other end of this next break. Andrew, of course, with Ordinary Times Magazine. He also fills in as a guest host from time to time here on The Big Talker. We've got things going on. And prior to his time in the writing world at Ordinary Times, following his service to our country, Andrew was involved in the transportation and logistics industry. And given that there was a lot of talk and has been a lot of talk surrounding supply chains and the inability to get product from vessel to land onto truck and then to the shelves of the stores that you frequent day to day. Well, Joe Biden, apparently he gave a speech yesterday. I did not catch it other than some of the clips that were sent over to me when Andrew contacted me and said, listen, I want to jump on. I've got a lot to say about the delivery of words that came out of the mouth of Joe Biden yesterday, where he told us, hey, listen, we're going to help alleviate this situation at our ports near the major coastal cities, particularly on the West Coast. We're just going to do that by opening the ports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and all of our problems are going to be solved. To not mention, worker shortages at the ports, truck driver shortages. Did not mention the fact that California has a very strict law and regulation when it comes to the types of trucks and vehicles that can move in and out of these ports. Nothing to do with any of that, of course, which has everything to do with the supply chain issue. And also, of course, when it comes to the manufacturing of these sorts of products worldwide, the economy shuts down. Well, like one of those big vessels sitting out in the ocean, takes a little while to get these things moving again. And it seemed as if we were, turning the corner earlier this year. Well, things have changed. Government has spent more money. We've seen prices continue to increase rather than level off. And now very difficult to get common items that you're used to purchasing at an affordable price, if the items are even there on the shelf. So Andrew will dissect some of the comments made by Joe Biden yesterday. But I also want to get his take from the response that the White House press secretary Jen Psaki delivered to reporters. So trying to pull this one over that, American consumers don't really pay attention to the things that they purchase year to year and the cost of those items. Yet no matter where you go, you notice that there's probably a couple of extra bucks being put towards, topping off your gas tank or getting the necessities when you go to the grocery store. Probably noticing a bit when it comes to how much more you're spending on your daily trip to the grocery store or your weekly fill up at the gas station. That, according to her, in the elite circles that they run in Washington, D.C., of course, they don't see that being an issue. But nonetheless, here we are. So Andrew will phone in after this quick timeout here on the Big Talker FM. Again, he'll, of course, before we get into maybe the ins and outs of supply chains and what the president had said, we'll give you Andrew's background just a bit so we can qualify his upcoming thoughts with the understanding that he knows a little bit about how this all rolls and why we're sort of stuck in the mud in getting this economy back up and running. We've hit the halfway point here at the Big Talker FM here until 10 o'clock. Of course, we enjoy all of your phone calls at 910-299-7535.
I just died in your arms tonight. It must have been something you said. I just died in your arms tonight. Something I can't get. Broken hearts lie all around me.
Hey, I'm Yael Osowski.
And I'm David Clement.
We're the host of Consumer Choice Radio, broadcasting every Saturday at 10 a.m. here on the Big Talker 106.7 FM.
Consumer Choice Radio is a weekly conversation featuring the latest news, interviews, and expert analysis that covers consumer topics from around the world.
ConsumerChoiceRadio.com.
Hey, this is Mark Markley with Recovering Hope. We're going to continue with our diversion into prevention and alternative treatments for the Wuhan flu that you don't hear anywhere else. We'll continue to speak with a variety of professionals and others with personal experience. We'll share the truth, reduce your fears, and bring you hope. So please tune in right here on the Big Talker every Wednesday from 6 to 7 p.m. for Recovering Hope.
The Wilmington Cape Fear Home Builders Association serves as the advocate for the building industry, advancing professionalism and promoting community involvement. We are a positive force for responsible growth while protecting property rights and the privilege of home ownership. 3 out of every 5 jobs is touched in some manner by construction in our region. Growth generates jobs, maintains our property values, and builds and updates our infrastructure. Join us Friday mornings for the Construction Connection with the Wilmington Cape Fear Home Builders Association and the Big Talker FM.
I'm Rob Renz, Marine Corps veteran, entrepreneur, and local business owner. Join me and my buddies on Monday from 6 to 7 for Signal Fire Radio, where we discuss how to successfully transition from the military and become a signal fire in your community. That's Signal Fire Radio, Mondays from 6 to 7 p.m. on 106.7 The Big Talk.
Hi, I'm Dr. Gabe Frank of the Frank Institute, and I wanted to tell you about our IV vitamin, infusion, and hydration therapies. These IVs are the most effective treatment for vitamin and nutrition deficiencies available, and with our wide range of offering, your treatment can be tailored to your specific needs. Whether you struggle with hydration or nutritional deficiency, injury recovery, low energy, please feel free to check out our IV infusions today. Schedule an appointment at 910-679-8534 or check out all our treatment services at www.frankinstitute.com.
Try to be best, cause you're only a man, and a man's got to learn to take it. Try to believe, though the going gets rough, that you gotta hang tough to make it. History repeats itself, try and you succeed. Never doubt that you're the one, and you can have your dream. You're the best around. Nothing's gonna ever keep you down.
Second half of our show is underway here on the Big Talker FM. 3 hours a day, 5 days a week here on the Big Talker FM. So yesterday, as I mentioned, moving into the timeout, the President of the United States, delivered us his strategy and game plan to get the economy moving again. Well, we're just going to open the ports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And we're working with oil and gas producers to help deal with the rise in oil and gas prices across the country. Well, after sticking it to the oil and gas producers on day one of his administration, now he's coming back to the negotiating table, apparently. Andrew Donaldson knows a little something about transportation and logistics, and maybe he'll break this down for us so we can understand what the gibberish coming out of the mouth of the President of the United States is all about yesterday. Andrew, it's a pleasure. Good morning.
Morning, Joe. I'm always thrilled to be with you, and gibberish is the right word. I heard the video and I saw the clips. You get the little 30-second clips, and I wanted to be fair to the president, and it was so shocking to me what I was hearing. I actually went on whitehouse.gov. People need to use this. Go on whitehouse.gov, all the press briefings within a few minutes. Usually they have the full transcripts of the press briefings, Jen Psaki's press briefings, anytime the president does something. I sat down and read the transcript because I just wanted to make sure I heard everything exactly how it was. We're in having information accurate, right, Joe? I actually sat down and read it. Joe Catenacci, that much word salad should only be served at Olive Garden with unlimited breadsticks and a bottle of dressing. This was so much. Whoever wrote this copy and the president's just reading what they put on the screen. Whoever wrote this is so utterly pig ignorant to how transportations and logistics in America work and how the global supply chain interacts with that. That speechwriter should be fired. Whoever approved that should never be allowed to work in communications ever again. It was that bad. And then when you add in all the other things the administration did yesterday, like Prime Minister Klein, who's the chief of staff and ostensibly runs the administration, using little emoji clips to send out positive news things and going, this right here, he's one of my teenage children. Or Jen Psaki, just give me a second here because this just fired me up. Jen Psaki gets in front of a microphone, and I'm not going to quote it exactly because you already touched on it, but she basically, and I'm paraphrasing here, you can go look at the excerpt, said, well, the American people don't pay attention to year-over-year number. The hell we don't. The people here that have to do our families, we know what we paid for food last year and what we paid for it this year. We know what we paid for gas last year. We paid for this year. Joe Catenacci, let's just bear this lie out real quick for everybody involved. I went back and looked. We're into information, not affirmation, right, buddy? I went back and looked. Here we go. Look at this. Going through the archives of the Big Talker. 27 months ago, Joe Catenacci sat in that exact chair on the 9th floor of the Murchison building, and you did 40 minutes of prime radio real estate on the Wilmington port. You had in experts. 3 times in the next 3 weeks, you brought in elected officials talking about the port in Wilmington, expanding the port, dredging the river. You remember this? We talked about this. We need to dredge the river so we can get bigger container ships in. We need more of a port. Leland, right across the river, is becoming a trucking hub for the entire region. All those trucking companies, all you got to do is drive down the road and look left. All the trucking companies, they got their signs right along the road down through there. You could have a transportation hub even bigger than Wilmington already. 27 months ago, you talked about it. Oh, here's a good one. 22 months ago, that's almost 2 years ago, Joe, you had on the president of a national trucking company talking about the truck driver shortage 22 months ago. You had him on 4 more times over the next 7 and 8 months talking about what a bomb the truck driver shortage was going to be when it went off in this economy, and the blast radius of that bomb was going to do things to the American economy that people have never seen before, because there's 2 different kinds of inflations. This is a supply side inflation problem. And guess what? How you don't get supplies is if you ain't got any truck drivers to move any of the supplies. That was back all the way back in. I bring all that up to raise this point with Jen Psaki. The idea that Andrew Donaldson and Joe Catenacci and the informed listeners of the Big Talker in Coastal Carolina have been engaged on these issues, not for a news cycle, not for a couple of days, not for a couple of weeks, but for years we've been talking about this being a problem. For them to stand in front of their microphones and to trot out officials and to talk to us like we're children who just don't understand how benevolently they are managing the economy so that we can live wonderful lives and vote Democratic in the coming midterms is so insulting to the American people who have been way more dialed in on these issues than they have been. And we have the proof now. And here's the thing with all of this. They just want to fix an optic, and we'll get into the details. They want to fix an optic like they did with the legislation that's total. They want to talk about optics like Afghanistan. They want to talk about optics. They know that a fail and a loss is coming, and they can't do anything about it. So now we're going to stack up the optics and hope we can ride it out with good optics. And now you say something, because I'm going to catch my breath and calm down.
Andrew Donaldson is with us, a little fiery this morning at Ordinary Times Magazine. You can find his work at ordinary-times.com. Also recently with a published piece in the Washington Examiner. Fills in as a guest host from time to time here on The Big Talker. And has worked in the transportation logistics business and knows a little thing about getting, again, product from vessel to land and then to automobile that then ultimately delivers product to the store shelves in which you frequent and consume day to day. And I think, Andrew, that's you try to look for the silver lining and the mess of COVID 2020 and the lockdown and the shutdown. Well, I think for a lot of people, given that they had so much extra time on their hands, they dug in and learned a little bit more about these sorts of things. Because when things are going well and you have mass abundance and choice when it comes to the stores and the different products that you want to purchase, you don't think much about this. And then all of a sudden you can't find toilet paper, or you can't find gasoline, or you can't find your kids' juice boxes, and you start to think, or you can't get your grandparents or mother or father's medication. You start to think about how these sorts of things work and just how impactful it will be when you decide to shut down the entire world for the better part of 3-6 months before we started to ramp it back up. So I think at the end, maybe a little silver lining that is going to make it any better or make you feel good about the situation that is upon us. But people got a bit of an education on how this sort of stuff works, things that you've been experienced in for quite some time in an earlier career of yours.
Yeah, and here's what they've learned. They've learned that there's some blame because of COVID, but what COVID really was COVID ripped the Band-Aid off a lot of stuff that was already going on. And now our elected leaders want to just blame COVID for everything, but people are smart, like you said. They're realizing that these shortages are like, well, wait a minute. Maybe this crisis is just revealing cracks and issues that were already inherent into the system. You bring up the toilet paper thing. The toilet paper wasn't a supply problem. It was a demand problem because everybody just kept running the stores and you had to run on it. And then people, after about a couple of days, went, well, wait, this is ridiculous. Why are we doing this? Everybody calmed down, and it fixed itself. And people learn how these things work. But what they've learned with COVID and what we're learning with California right now, because remember, the Port of Los Angeles and the Port of Long Beach, which are decently adjacent in logistical terms, you're talking 40% of all containers that come into this country, particularly from the Asian markets and that sort of thing, just because it's on that coast. That's a massive amount of the U.S. economy. And people are figuring out, well, why is it California ports that are having the problem here? So now we can get on our smartphones and get on Google and listen to things like your show and other show and dig into journalists that are actually doing good work on this subject. And they're starting to discover that, oh, maybe the problem the California ports are having isn't just because of COVID, but because of all the regulation and the way that they're dealing with things. Let's give you one real practical example. How many years now have we been talking about AB 5 legislation in California? Remember that? That's the gig economy bill that they passed. Joe Catenacci's in the gig economy. You have multiple side hustles. I'm in the gig economy when I freelance a piece or when I try to do a media something. That's the gig economy. California wanted to crack down on the gig economy. Ostensibly, they were going after like Uber and things. But one of the things is they don't write legislation isn't written on hopes and dreams. It's written in black and white. They didn't do any carve out for truck drivers. There's three kinds of truck drivers when you're talking about container shipment. You have company owned. That's like Joe Catenacci, works for Walmart, drives a Walmart truck, does whatever Walmart does, and Walmart's paycheck, the paycheck says Walmart, and Joe works for Walmart. That's a company driver. Then you have owner-operators. Joe Catenacci owns Joe Catenacci Trucking. He owns his truck, he owns his trailer, and he freelances and goes and chases loads or takes short-term contracts. And then there's a big block of this that legislation absolutely gutted, which is called lease operations, which would be Joe Catenacci would lease a truck because the trucks are very expensive, and then would try to go and do freelance works. And it's a very complicated legal thing, but things like AB5 didn't do any carve-outs for that. Now, the implication of that has been in and out of court since April. Again, this was all predictable that this was going to be a problem. It's been in court on and off for months. It's in effect, it's not in effect, it's in effect, it's not in effect. The effect in the real world, though, is that a lot of people just threw up their hands and walked off. There's a massive truck shortage. The president can talk about expanding the ports all he wants to, the hours, and running 24/7. Well, that sounds great, but it doesn't matter. In fact, let me make sure I quote you this exactly correctly. He cited his own port czar in his comments yesterday, a guy by the name of John Porcari. Porcari was an Obama-era transportation official. And by the way, Joe Biden called him Joe twice. His name's John, but I digress. Over a month ago, Porcari, I may be pronouncing his name wrong, actually got the hours at the Los Angeles port, or Long Beach and Los Angeles ports expanded. Joe, do you know how many trucks showed up for the expanded hours at Long Beach Terminal on the first night of the longer hours last month? The exact amount of Heisman Trophy winners Joe Catenacci has on his shelf. 0. Not one single truck showed up. So what the president's saying, they've already been trying it for over a month. And I won't bore you with how ports work, but you have two shifts. They want the morning shift because they've only got 11 hours of work in a 14-hour workday. Only 11 of those hours can they actually drive. They want the morning shifts. They don't like the evening shifts. And then when you add in a 5-hour window, it's not even really a 24-hour op. They're just adding in a five-hour overflow period, but that's neither here nor there. These things, they've been doing this for a month. It's still not working because unless Joe Biden magically gets a couple thousand truck drivers to show up in the state of California, it doesn't matter what Walmart and FedEx and UPS, who, by the way, have been running 24/7 since World War II and when these companies came into being. Freight's always been a 24-hour operation. It's idiotic for them to act like that's some kind of big revelation. If you don't get it out of the port, and the truck drivers at the port, because they're showing up, they don't have a load. They're not going to sit there all day. They're not moving. If you ain't hauling, you ain't making money. They're not going to sit there. And now companies have figured out it's cheaper to just let their containers sit at the port than pay for it to sit in a warehouse. So now we have 60 ships sitting off the coast that can't unload because there's no room. There's no drivers. Do you see how this all stacks up? And it was all predictable. Truck driver shortage, bad regulation, bad preparing, not being planned. You have a COVID crisis. Guess what happens under crisis? The crisis exposes failures. And these failures, unlike the president saying it's a private sector issue, no, these failures was the government setting us up for economic failure, and here we are.
Andrew Donaldson, laying the wood down here this morning, just straight fire coming from his mouth out in the Fayetteville area. And Andrew, I think you laid that out in a 10 to 15 minute, we'll call it a monologue because I didn't have to say much. And thank you for that. Needed a little time out for the day. You laid that out for us, in a clear, concise way, one that you will not get, of course, in the 30-second soundbite that you hear throughout the 24/7 cable news channels or anywhere else, when it comes to dissecting this issue, just a little bit beneath the surface here this morning. And as you said, ripping that Band-Aid off, so to speak, that just doesn't have to do with logistics, supply chain, transportation. I mean, you and I were talking last night about education and how screwed up our kids are at this point when it comes to how we've handled that. Again, just exposing a system that had been under stress for a long, long time. You throw another wrench into the situation and look at how the chips fall from it.
Yeah, and this all comes out of an issue in transportation. Folks need to read up on it called just-in-time shipping. When you buy something at Walmart, as soon as you check out, Walmart's computers automatically order that item to refill this shelf. If you order a bunch of them, it'll order twice as many, or based on an algorithm, they'll order extra because they're trying to predict a run on it. Just-in-time shipping. This all comes out of the Toyota Lean Sigma 6 models. But what's happened is, let's take this example like this, Joe. In Wilmington, when a hurricane's coming, we know to stock up on stuff because your kitchen runs on just-in-time principles. A good Italian boy like you understands if we're going to make Sunday sauce on Friday or Saturday, I got to go get my tomatoes, I got to get my meats, I got to get my pork because pork's where the flavor is. We got to get all that good stuff and get it. But it has a shelf life. You can only buy it so many days in advance, and as soon as it gets in your kitchen, you've got to use it, or you not only lose money because it goes bad and you can't use it, but you've lost double the money because now you got to go buy it again. Same thing. This is just on a bigger scale. It's the exact same principles, just in time. The just-in-time system got a major wrinkle when the global supply chain started contracting a little bit, when you started having a domestic policy problem like the truck driver shortage, and then when COVID hit and hit worldwide. And remember, it's waves worldwide because China and Vietnam and the places where we get these goods for Walmart, they didn't have peak COVID issues at the same time we did. So it's like waves coming across the world over multiple months. The just-in-time system was not built to handle that because, like the hurricane, they weren't stocked up for the emergency. And now all of a sudden you can't just run to the store and buy stuff. You're going to have to wait a couple weeks, and it ripples down and ripples down and ripples down. That's the bigger picture issue happening. The president has no power to fix any of that. There's nothing he can do to fix any of that. And the reason they're panicking here, Joe, and I know we're kind of monologuing on you, and I apologize, but it's an important topic. The reason they're panicking right now is because they're already getting the data, and they already know there's only two times that the American people really pay attention to economics. When there's a crisis, COVID, inflation, gas prices, that sort of stuff, they pay attention to economics. And every year, and you know this because you've been sitting in that chair for 15 years now, Christmas is the one time of the year everybody wants to talk about economics. They run package after package after package on economics, and that's why you have the embarrassment of a journalist in the White House press corps shouting at the back of a retreating Joe Biden, "Are there going to be presents at Christmas?" And this is on the audio feed. I'm not making this up. They literally asked the president as he walked away, "Is there going to be presents at Christmas?" Oh, my God. What is wrong with our media? But that's all they care about is at Christmas. They know the Christmas economy is going to be a disaster this year. They're stocking up these optics things like we're trying, because they know that big old L is going on the scoreboard. Listen to their actions. Their words don't tell you what's going on. Their actions tell you. They know a problem's coming. They know they can't fix it. They're trying to build up to try to get enough to try to ride it out. Pay attention to people like you, Joe, and other writers that have been talking about this for years and tell you ahead of time, get ahead of the news, quit reacting to it, because now the administration is just going to react to this news and the American people are going to live through it.
I think we need to get a transcript of the last 15 or 20 minutes and just place that transcript, without my input, right on your website at ordinary-times.com. And everyone can get a reader's view of what they just heard here this morning to get the clear-cut picture as to this situation as compared to what our fearless leader of the United States told us yesterday in front of the White House. And then, as you said, immediately did an about face and would not answer or respond to any other questions. And as far as Christmas and presents at Christmas, well, we all know who we need to ask for that, and that is, of course, Kris Kringle. We need to ask Santa Claus to see if he'll be delivering those presents under the tree for the little boys and girls on December 25th.
Yep. Well, and as a parent of children, we know that Kris Kringle, I don't know if he's a union guy or what, but he never seems to show up, and I'm up at 2 a.m. making sure all that stuff gets laid out just right, but I do get a cookie at least out of it. So that's how that works. Sorry, folks, we live in Reelsville. This is how this works. So tell you what, let me finish shaping up these sweaters I just laid out on my table where I washed them, and I'll get on the keyboard and we'll write you something up, because that's the exciting lifestyle of political and commentary writers in the year of our Lord 2021. Who's got it better than us, buddy? Life's good. I don't want to be all negative. These things are fixable. They can be fixed, but we need appropriate leadership that actually knows what they're talking about instead of just gaslighting the American people. And listen, whenever he says private sector, understand he's not saying private sector, because Joe Biden, 50-year D.C. insider. If you looked up generic Democrat in the dictionary, you would see a picture of Joseph Robinette Biden. When he says private sector, he means us. When he says government, he means him, because that's what and that's not even an attack. That's just who that guy is. He thinks the government solves everything. and us, the people, the private sector, are the problem. Watch for that language every time he brings it up. Brought it up last night. He's like, well, this is really the private sector does all this. No, he's trying to shift blame a little bit. One last thing, I'll throw this in. They talk about the private sector and capitalism. Well, yeah, but if you have an unruly teenager who yells and screams and has bad emotional skills, part of the reason is if they grew up with a parent for 13, 14 years that has bad emotional skills and bad communication skills, and all they ever did was yell and scream at them, they are a product of that environment. We've had bad regulation policies, and we've had bad thoughts and bad leadership in things like transportation for decades, and now we want to know why the logistics side of the house is so schizophrenic. Let's lay the blame where it goes. It goes both ways. Everybody needs to examine this thing, and they just need to fix it. And let's have some good leadership to do that, like we've been talking about the last couple of days with people like Richard Battle. We have no leadership. We have optics where we should have leadership right now.
Ordinary-times.com later on today. Andrew will have a piece, dissecting some of the things that we just laid out there for you here this morning over the last half hour. Andrew, you're one of the best, and that's why we come a-calling every so often to get your clear-cut thoughts on the news of the day. Thanks so much.
You're the best, Joe. I appreciate your time and all the listeners. Look forward to getting down with you again soon.
Good to have Andrew Donaldson with us here this morning. Again, ordinary-times.com if you want to find more of his work. Again, recently as a West Virginia boy, had a story on Senator Joe Manchin, who he is, who he's been, where he's going in this whole debate surrounding the two behemoth pieces of legislation over at WashingtonExaminer.com. Andrew is frustrated, and as it seemed as if he was pulling his hair out of his head while he was delivering the great insight and perspective you get nowhere else here this morning. He seemed like he was having a lot of fun doing it as well. You gotta have some fun. You gotta smile every once in a while, particularly if you've got that pit of uneasiness in your stomach. We'll be back.
Hey, baby, let's go out there like a bunch of crazy dogs and have some fun.
O'Leary's Automotive Repair has multiple locations in the area in Hampstead, Leland, the Myrtle Grove area, Ogden, and Wrightsboro. O'Leary's Automotive Repair, a trusted, locally owned business since 2006.
Hey, this is Matt Ham, co-founder of Uprint and the co-host of Wake Up Our Faith, every Saturday and Sunday right here in Wilmington's Big Talker. We invite you to join with our nonprofit movement by participating in the Portable Faith Community. This is a $10 a month tax-deductible contribution, and you get access to daily encouragement, resources, as well as our prayer community. You can go to wakeupmyfaith.com to get subscribed and learn more. That's wakeupmyfaith.com.
Hey, I'm Yael Osowski.
And I'm David Clement.
We're the host of Consumer Choice Radio, broadcasting every Saturday at 10 a.m. here on the Big Talker 106.7 FM.
Consumer Choice Radio is a weekly conversation featuring the latest news, interviews, and expert analysis that covers consumer topics from around the world.
ConsumerChoiceRadio.com.
Here, Tom Goolsby on the Joe Catenacci Show.
People with common sense know that the entire theory of socialism is one big lie.
The Big Talker 106.7 FM.
All right, as we move up into the top of the hour here on the Big Talker FM, great commentary there from Andrew Donaldson. I did like the way he went back into the archives and dug up multiple conversations we've been having over multiple years, highlighting a lot of the issues that have now, come to the forefront of, our nation's attention and the attention of our so-called leaders. We've only been doing it here for, 2.5 years. If I do say so myself. Our third and final hour straight ahead here on the Big Talker FM.
Keeping Leland informed. The Big Talker 106.7 FM WFBT, Carolina Beach.
Norway's domestic security agency. Police in Norway say the suspect, a Danish man, is a Muslim convert previously flagged as having been radicalized.
The man is suspected of having shot at people in a number of locations in the town of Kongsberg on Wednesday evening. Several of the victims were in a supermarket. The victims were 4 women and 1 man between the ages of 50 and 70. Police were alerted just after 6 p.m. on Wednesday to a man shooting with a bow and arrows in Kongsberg, some 41 miles southwest of Oslo. Officers made contact with the suspect, but he escaped and wasn't caught until 35 minutes after the attack began. Officials believe that the man didn't start killing people until police arrived on the scene. I'm Zaria Shakli.
A building fire in southern Taiwan. It blazed out of control for hours overnight, leaving at least 46 people dead. The number of unemployment applications tumbling to its lowest level since the start of the pandemic.
The Labor Department says unemployment claims dropped by 36,000 to 293,000 last week. It's the second straight drop and the smallest number of people to apply for benefits since March of 2020, when the pandemic intensified. Many businesses struggling to fill jobs have held on to their workers. Hiring has slowed in the past 2 months, even as companies and other employers have posted a near-record number of open jobs.
Correspondent Jeremy House. China rising, preparing to send several astronauts to its space station for 6 months, a new milestone for a program that has advanced rapidly in recent years. Watching Wall Street this morning, Dow futures up 294 points, NASDAQ futures 158 points higher. More on these stories at townhall.com.
The following is not an actor, but a real-life story from Trinity Debt Management.
I was finishing undergrad and got credit cards because I couldn't work full-time. So that started the credit card journey for me.
If you're in debt and you need help, call Trinity at 1-800-990-6976.
And then when I got married, we combined our credit card debt and it became impossible to pay off on our own. At that point, I was like, I don't know where to turn. And then I found Trinity.
Trinity will consolidate your accounts into one easy-to-manage monthly payment, reduce your interest, and possibly improve your credit score. You'll save thousands.
I initially was scared to call, and immediately I felt relief. I mean, in a matter of 3 years, we've already paid down $20,000 in credit card debt, which is huge.
Call Trinity at 1-800-990-6976. That's 1-800-990-6976.
At least 3 people killed, many more injured during a protest in Beirut by Hezbollah and its allies against the lead judge probing last year's massive explosion in the city's port. The BBC's Anna Foster is there.
What began as a protest against Judge Tariq Bittar outside the Palace of Justice this morning with chanting and marching has escalated significantly. There's now heavy rolling gunfire in the streets of Badaro in central Beirut. You can hear the Lebanese armed forces moving into position and now very loud explosions as they try to work out where the firing is coming from. And at this stage, there's such a level of confusion that nobody knows for sure who is firing at who.
Participants in a Holocaust Remembrance Conference in Sweden blaming social media for contributing to a global rise in anti-Semitism. News and analysis at townhall.com. Profits soar at Delta Airlines, raking in $1.2 billion in the third quarter.
Delta says travel demand is improving after flattening out in late summer when coronavirus cases spiked in the U.S. But lucrative corporate and international travel continues to lag. Meanwhile, Delta's trying to set its own course on vaccine policy. Unlike other airlines, Delta is letting employees pick regular testing as an alternative to getting the shots. That could run afoul of President Biden's order that federal contractors require their employees to be vaccinated, not tested, in place of getting vaccinated. Keith Peters reporting.
A Texas federal judge blocking United Airlines from placing unvaccinated employees on unpaid leave if those workers are seeking a religious or a medical exemption to that airline's COVID vaccine mandate. Once again on Wall Street this hour, Dow futures up 283 points. More on these stories at townhall.com.
The champ is here! The champ is here! The champ is here! The champ is here!
Let me tell you something you already know. The world ain't all sunshine and rainbows. It's a very mean and nasty place, and I don't care how tough you are, it will beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it. You, me, or nobody is gonna hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done.
When the moon hits your eye like a big pizza pie, that's amore. When the world seems to shine like you've had too much wine, that's amore.
All right, 7 minutes past the top of the hour. We've hit our final 60-minute session of the day here on the Big Talker, 106.7 FM. Can't wait to get outside. Looks beautiful from atop our perch here this morning. We overlook Battleship, North Carolina, peeking into Brunswick County this morning, as we do each and every day here on the Big Talker FM. Twice a month, the boys from the Southeast Republican Men's Association join the program, and we stick to a lot of local issues. We dab into some of the national news of the day. Right now, Harry Knight is with us from SERMA. That's SERMA.GOP. Their monthly meeting here in October has been postponed due to the fact that it falls on the same day as a candidates forum that will be held for Wilmington City Council and the mayoral race over at the Union Station building at Cape Fear Community College. That's, in fact, a week from tonight. I believe it begins at 6:30. So a few more opportunities if you're engaged in some of the local issues and the upcoming municipal races that, in fact, you've got time still. It's not like one of those federal elections where the early voting lines are out the door on Election Day. You may have to sit in line for an hour or two, or however long it may take. Unfortunately, these municipal elections have traditional low voter turnout, so it's going to be easy for you to get in and out. With that said, if you haven't been paying attention, there is still time to get engaged and involved and informed on where the candidates stand and what some of the pressing issues are, facing our local area, the city of Wilmington, the town of Leland, some of the other municipalities as well. Harry, it's a pleasure.
Thank you, Joe, and good morning, everybody. So I would like to just continue on with that thought just a little bit, because early voting did open today. And yes, our October meeting has been canceled. I would encourage all of our members and other interested parties to go to the Cape Fear Community College Forum and listen to our city council candidates as well as our mayor. And let's just be clear, if you've been paying, and Joe's right, traditionally it's a low turnout. We cannot afford that this time. If you have been paying attention to the various things being said and done, especially in our mayor race, you will find that one candidate, if you look on his press releases, social media posts, other stuff, you can sum up his campaign and how he's going to behave as a mayor in about one sentence. I'm going to stand up there and I'm going to say stuff. I don't know how to do anything, but I'm going to say stuff. If you think the Board of Education issues are bad now, wait until you have that guy in charge of City Wilmington backing them up. So I know there's a lot of listeners on this radio station and a lot of our members in SERMA that sometimes have the attitude that, well, if it doesn't have an R behind the name, I'm not voting for him. And I've seen some people write comments like, well, I'm going to write in thick brick for mayor. I'm here to tell you, whether you like it or not, you have two choices. You can either have our current mayor, Bill Saffo, who by no means is perfect, but he is certainly competent and certainly has the best interests of Wilmington in mind. Or you can put an absolute sit around and say stuff and take complete liberal positions and do absolutely nothing to help Wilmington for the next 4 years. You have those two choices. Sometimes life is a result of you have to make a choice between two bad options because there just isn't one good one, in your opinion. You need to vote in the mayor's race, and you need to not vote for Harper Peterson.
Well, there's one clear cut. I've used that term way too much today, but you don't have to figure out what Harry's trying to say there. He just laid it to you straight here this morning, and there's a lot you could say about Harold and Harper Peterson, and his time in the city council, his time at the state legislature. And I get it. When they're in the state legislature and you're in the minority party, it's very difficult to get things done. But there are some things that Republicans and Democrats here in North Carolina have been able to work on even recently. Still, some unknowns, particularly the energy thing. 'Cause to me, not all on board. We had State Senator Michael Lee on earlier, and he had talked about a bill that just passed and got the signature of Governor Cooper with wide Republican support, as he said, as far as some of the energy things go. This effort to go 70% decrease in carbon emissions in our state over the next 25, 30 years or something, and how consumer rates are going to work. I've tried to read that bill. It's not easy to decipher through massive amounts of legislation. You usually need a translator, someone who's been in that realm before to then help translate it into layman terms for people like me, because it gets really wordy and probably done on purpose, and it gets to a point where you just kind of get frustrated and just throw your hands up in the air. All right, looks good to me. It got all bipartisan support, and then you realize that it may not necessarily work out best for the people.
Yeah, and I'm an energy guy. For those that know me, know that I'm a former nuclear energy industry, and I haven't had a chance to go through that bill myself. And those that know me know that I will. So I'm with Joe. It's a little bit I've gone through is completely confusing. Does have good bipartisan support, which is a good indication, but that doesn't necessarily make it a great thing either. So over the next few weeks, I'm sure I'll have comments.
Harry Knight with us from the Southeast Republican Men's Association. You look at the city council race, there's 3 seats that can really change the dynamic of the board one way or the other, because there are very interesting candidates. You've got Charlie Rivenbark, who's been there, I think I saw 1993.
Yeah,
he was in office.
Early to mid 90s. He's been there for quite a while.
You have Clifford Barnett, who kind of rode a wave last cycle, and then you've got Kevin O'Grady, who is not running for re-election, and he's been here for ever too, at least 15, 20 years since probably 15 or so years since I came along in 2004. He seems to have been in the fray for a long time, part of that Residents of Old Wilmington crew, because he served as the former president of that group. Paul Lawler is, kind of rinsed his hands after losing out of the top 3. I think he was the 4th vote getter in the last cycle. He's running again, so kind of, same as the old boss, same as the new boss. If, that swapped and Mr. Lawler got in there instead of O'Grady, you're not going to change much there. Then you've got some other very interesting candidates, outside of that, maybe lesser known, but nonetheless, Luke Waddell on the Republican side, Jonathan Uzdaki, who's gotten a lot of pushback on social media, and he's been attacked from all angles. You've got J.B. Brookins in there as well. I haven't really heard much from him. Philip White he ran last cycle as well, I know. Angie Ulmer is one that has garnered a lot of outside support from some of these questionable organizations. We'll leave it at that. So, as always, what is it, like 4,500, maybe 5,000 votes gets you a seat on city council here in Wilmington?
Yeah, something like that. I haven't really looked at those numbers. And the city council race is another one of those important races, because you have that city council, and they're the ones that provide part of the funding if you're upset at Board of Education issues. So just like the county commissioners, the city provides some of that funding so you can impact those things. And now's an opportunity to make a change to start moving those things into a more positive direction. There are 3 seats open. One of them is a seat that's not being rerun, so we'll have at least one new council member, regardless of what happens today. There's a lot of pluses and minuses. You talked about Charlie. Charlie's a longtime Wilmington, very steady, and if you've looked at his background, he aligns very much with a lot of conservative values. Former Democrat, recently changed over to Republican because I think, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, obviously, he just got tired of some of the craziness. So Charlie's a steady hand. Luke Waddell is a businessman, small business owner in here, understands some of the things necessary for the balance of business development, because whether you like it or not, development is a lot of funds increase into the county and you need it. But he also understands infrastructure and the fact that we're behind in infrastructure compared to development. That's a real concern that we need to deal with. And then you've got Jonathan Uzgadi, who's got a very unique background and a very unique perspective on things, not afraid to stand up and speak up. He's probably a very refreshing voice on that council because he will bring up issues and point out things that others might not. So I think the combination of those three is probably your best three bets associated with the city council.
When you look at, I had Jonathan in the other day, and he made mention, we're paying all this money for a diversity, inclusion, and equity officer. He's like, I'm Venezuelan. I am diversity, inclusion, and equity as far as, the way that goes. So, not sure why we have all of these, bureaucratic administrative positions. Yeah, it looks good. We spend a lot of money on those sorts of positions as well. And most of the time, what results do we get out of that? Well, I'm not really sure.
Yeah, so some of those positions and watching some of those metrics is probably a good thing just to make sure you're not doing something stupid. But going out there and spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on salaries and staff and other things to, do a lot of these things, Jonathan's exactly right. We have a lot of diversity in a lot of the areas in Wilmington. We need to make sure that we keep it that way. But spending taxpayer dollars to go chase around a bunch of metrics that doesn't really mean anything when it comes to your quality of life, waste of time, waste of money.
Harry Knight with the Southeast Republican Men's Association, really honing in on the city council race. Again, early voting underway today. That continues for the next couple of weeks. November 2nd is Election Day. Harry, what else we've got going on here locally, or what has caught your attention lately when it comes to some of the news statewide, nationally? I know you were very intrigued by our last guest who was pretty much, this is how it is and this is why it is. And it's amazing, this sort of mindset. And I guess only if you can be insulated within government for long enough, I think they truly believe this. They truly believe that, all the world's problems can be solved by they in government, insulated in this bubble for 50 years. A lot of the same problems from 50 years ago are still, at the forefront today. And you could have, with a straight face, tell us that this is a private sector issue. If only government had more control, we'd be able to, get a handle on some of this. And that's not to say there isn't some, things that we can point out from the private sector. But we often know that the private sector does things in a affordable, effective manner in many instances because they have the bottom line to worry about. The government just prints money and spends it as they please, as we see now with COVID and now these two pieces of legislation that are being rolled out.
Yeah, and, with reference to your last guest and some of those things, I mean, it's just amazing what happened yesterday, and I won't repeat all the information that your last guest, obviously very informed, knows what he's talking about in transportation. Is talking about, we had a very good president at one time that said, government's not the solution, government is the problem. And that is exactly what's going on with those California ports. We had the President of the United States stand up in front of the public yesterday and try to take credit for what the private industry is doing. Regardless of the president and his task force doing anything, the private industry would have done exactly what was going on there because they're operating in their best interest, because it's in their best interest to get those products off those ships into that port, on the roads and onto the trains and out to their stores. That only makes sense, and it doesn't take a genius to figure that out. The other thing is they keep talking about, we're going to bring all these ships in. Well, if you don't have the trucks and the trains to empty the port's lots, which are completely full, you can't bring the ships in to unload the ships. at the end of the day, you physically got to move material. Standing around like I'm doing today and talking in a microphone isn't going to solve that. You need drivers, you need trucks, and you need trains.
Now, right now, the trains are backed up. We have no trucks, and regulation seems to be getting in the way of a lot of these things, particularly when you look out to California. I mean, they don't mention any of that sort of stuff in these various speeches that they're giving up in Washington, D.C. Just how crippling these mandates and regulations, particularly in California, have basically exacerbated this problem that we knew was coming. That's what I love about Andrew. He dug into my show from 2 years ago. He's like, dude, you've been talking about this for 2 years, and look where we are now. And you're the guy with a tinfoil hat on. It's amazing how this all works.
Now, one of the things that would be nice, I mean, it's terrible what's happened, because 40% of America's consumer goods goes through those ports in California. That's unbelievable. But a lot of that's because it's coming through the Asian countries, and that's the short route to get there. But this is an opportunity for like the Port of Wilmington potentially. Maybe not some of those really short routes we can take, but some of the other ones you can go around the horn and come into here, because our ports are expanding, and we should encourage that, because if we can do that here and we can deliver goods locally and on the East Coast, that's good for us. That's good for the shipping industry. That's a lot of economic development. And that's one of the things that, you'll hear me talk about on the way to New Hanover County Commissioner in November 2022 is we need more high-paying, good-quality jobs here in New Hanover County. We have a great service and movie industry, but we need good, just middle-class, solid jobs. That's what we're missing.
There's no question about it. I mean, there is a gap there, whether it be from a trade standpoint, whether it be from a technology standpoint. There are various industries that we can tap into that we're not right now to help bolster that median income. Instead of it being 35, why isn't it 45, 50? And
that's right.
With the growth,
and a lot of times you'll hear people complaining about affordable housing, which is a real problem. Right, given the inventory of housing we have available and the demand for housing, it truly is a supply and demand market here. But the part of the equation that people don't consider when they talk about affordable housing is your median income. Affordable housing depends on how much you make and how much you can afford as well. So it just gets right back to we need more and new, good quality manufacturing, engineering, steady jobs. We need to expand GE. We need to expand Corning. We need to bring in another GE. And then up that 421 corridor, we need a whole bunch of small manufacturing, engineering, and other service industries coming in there. And that's actually starting to move. You are starting to see some increases in there, but we need to accelerate that.
Harry Knight, once again, with the Southeast Republican Men's Association. If you'd like to learn more about what they do and why they do it here locally, go to their website at SERMA, SERMA.GOP. Got anything else this morning as we wrap up?
No, sir. I think I'm good. You got another hot topic?
No, I'm going to break. Did want to make mention because your daughter and I work in the same field, and I saw that she had to recently do her first flight road trip of the year for the Campbell Camels as the operations director there. Also, what a cool concept. So Campbell, Gardner-Webb out in Boiling Spring, I think it is, down towards Shelby.
Yep.
They are conference rivals in the Big South, and they have, announced their first ever, what is it, a barbecue bowl or something?
They're doing a barbecue bowl. Campbell took that last weekend, and they got this big old trophy, and they're eating barbecue all week, courtesy of Gardner-Webb.
Now, are they eating Western-style barbecue or Eastern-style barbecue?
Eastern-style barbecue.
Because they're, in Bowie's Creek.
That's right.
So Gardner-Webb has to pay for Campbell's Eastern-style barbecue this week up in Bowie's Creek. That's a cool little concept there that they've created, and sparks up that rivalry a bit.
Yeah, that ought to be a good ongoing rivalry. And then Campbell is here at home this weekend. In fact, when I get off of this show, we're planning on rolling up to go to the state fair for a day or two, and then roll over to the game, and then come back in. So it should be an interesting weekend.
Any food items that catch your eye at the state fair? Because you always hear about these crazy sorts of items that they're producing out there. Something deep fried, of course.
Yeah, there'll always be deep fried something. I'm a big fair guy, so I like peppers and onions and, big old fried donuts. And
well, hopefully in the RV, you've got, the John cleaned up for you. Because all those peppers and onions could lead to something down the road that you, as an older guy, you might not be prepared for. You're always prepared, I'm sure, with an extra pair of shorts. Harry, thanks a lot, man. That's Harry Knight with us this morning with the Southeast Republican Men's Association, SERMA, SERMA.GOP, if you want to learn more and get involved with their local organization. 26 minutes past the hour. If you'd like to jump into the conversation, of course, our number, 910-299-7535.
Hi, this is Justin Humphreys from the Humphreys Law Firm on Eastwood Road. The Humphreys Law Firm is located in Lumina Station, Wilmington, North Carolina, practices civil litigation, intellectual property, commercial, and residential real estate. Please give us a call at 910-332-0721 or visit us on our website, which is www.humphreysfirm.law. You can also listen to me every Thursday from 6 to 7 p.m. on the Big Talker 106.7 FM.
Besides my involvement in product recovery, I'm also in the construction business. I say that to say this. When we have tropical storms or hurricanes, the real hard, difficult, expensive, and dangerous work is usually the result of trees falling on homes or other personal property. Hurricane season is not the only time to get prepared for this. As a matter of fact, it's before and after hurricane season that you need to get prepared. My son Chris started his tree business called Klein Pro Expert Tree Care after Hurricane Florence. Chris has all the equipment and manpower to take on even the most challenging jobs. With over 20 years of combined experience, Klein Pro LLC can safely remove any unwanted hazardous trees from your property. They also offer tree pruning, elevation, dead wood removal, and other expert tree care services. Don't wait until you have a tree emergency. Visit kleinpro.com, that's Klein with a K. Check them out on Facebook or call Chris Markley at 910-540-5249. Mention this ad for a 10% discount.
Those aren't fireworks. The gang violence here in Wilmington has got to be stopped. As your city councilman, I'll give our law enforcement agencies the direction and support they need to make our streets, ball fields, and schools safe. While doing that, I'll also keep our small businesses open so they can do what they do best, work hard and be profitable. I'm Luke Waddell, I'm running for city council, and I ask for your vote. Paid for by the committee to elect Luke Waddell.
Folks, we all know ongoing road construction and traffic can weigh heavy on your vehicle. Since 2006, O'Leary's Automotive Repair has provided comprehensive repair services at affordable prices to get you back on the road in no time. Their ASE certified technicians will help you find a cost-effective repair and maintenance alternatives. O'Leary's has multiple locations in the area in Hampstead, Leland, the Myrtle Grove area, Ogden, and Wrightsboro. O'Leary's Automotive Repair, a trusted, locally owned business since 2006.
This is Chad Adams, president of Red Wolf Broadcasting, proud to announce our fall lineup starting October of 2021. From 7 to 10 a.m., we have Joe Catenacci covering all of the local issues of the day and looking at some of the national things that are happening. Then Mike Gallagher, one of America's longest-running talk show hosts, from 10 to noon. From noon to 3 p.m., we have the up-and-coming Clay Travis and Buck Sexton. You're going to love that show. And then one of the toughest hosts in America, Dana Lash, from 3 to 6 p.m. So join us each and every day, Monday through Friday, here on the Big Talker FM.
You crying loud all the way across town. You've been searching for that someone that is beyond the crowd. That's just sit around.
All right, as we head down the stretch, final half hour of our show here this morning on the Big Talker FM. If you'd like to call in, the number, 910-299-7535. If you'd like to be a part of the show, along with the commentary that keeps the conversation going through our social media platforms. On Facebook, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel, of course. Find us at the Big Talker, 106.7 FM. Some local news, as we mentioned just a little while ago. Early voting is underway today. That continues through the next few weeks. Election Day, November 2nd. Story also that caught my attention again. Another day, another story surrounding the state of our public schools. And we hear that the 15-year-old involved in this shooting at New Hanover High School going to be charged and tried as an adult. And then we hear, a story from just another high school within the district as a young girl gets bullied, beat up, took the necessary precautions and protocols to go to the administration within her high school. And you're walking down the hall right after you get out of the principal's office and you get jumped again. Videos surfacing and getting recycled throughout social media. The mom's like, well, you could have probably just walked her to school or walked her to the class if you thought there was some trouble, going to be brewing based on what my kid told you, and you did nothing. Again, as Andy mentioned before, a lot of these underlying issues have been there for quite some time. You shut the world down, and then you're looking at each other. Well, how did this all come about? Well, you rip the Band-Aid off, and it stings for a little while, and you realize that all of those underlying issues are now bubbling to the surface and oozing out. And it's a very frustrating thing to watch on a day-to-day basis, given the fact that, as Andy pointed out, we talk about many of these issues and have had lengthy discussions about many of these issues months and months and months in advance of, it rearing its ugly head now, in the headlines and, within the mainstream news of the day, which is why, we encourage you 3 hours, a couple of hours a day right here. You get everything you need. JoeCats.com. If you missed a portion of the conversation, podcast version of the show gets published right after 10 o'clock Eastern time each and every morning at JoeCats, JoeCats.com. 910-299-7535 is our number. Caller, you're with us. Good morning.
Hey, Joe. It's Fred Fisher down here at Carolina Beach.
Hey, how are you doing today on the beach? Fish?
Yep. I was just calling to chime in to what Harry was talking about. Harry's a good fellow. I hope he wins for the commissioners this year. One of the things he was mentioning about the 421 quarter, and the big problem for heavy industry here is we don't have a high super pressure gas line, and that's what's keeping it from happening. So we really need to push for that. So on the other hand, he mentioned going to the state fair and to Campbell. Well, yesterday was my birthday. I was 78, and so I always go to the state fair every year. I've been going there every year since I can remember when I grew up in Raleigh. Only time I missed was when I was in the Navy during the Vietnam era. And so I go every year. I'm going up to visit my son and my grandson and my granddaughter. You go to the state fair. Then I'm coming back and going to my alma mater, which is Campbell College, which was now, of course, it's now Campbell University. And so I graduated from there in 1968. But I love Buies Creek, and it's just a great area up there. So
certainly is.
I'll run into Harry up at the state fair. I'll buy him one of those greasy Polish sausage with onions and bell pepper on it.
Hey, Fish, I know you've told me that your kid lives out, Orange County? Are you happy that the Orange County Board of Education has made a motion to, disavow white supremacy and white nationalism? I'm not sure. Were they in favor of that, before and now, have just come out against it for the need to push that sort of, proposal across their desk just last week?
I'm not sure. Tell me about that again, about they disavowing white supremacy. What are they?
Yeah, so apparently, it's a big thing up there in the Chapel Hill, Orange County area, right? Am I correct that Orange County is the Chapel Hill region of our state?
Yeah.
And they've adopted a resolution to stand united against all forms of white nationalism and white supremacy. We do know that's the biggest threat to our nation right now. White supremacy.
Really?
And I'm just wondering, was the school board in favor of white nationalism and supremacy, prior to this? It's a question to ask, I guess, those elected officials.
I reckon it is. I'll have to ask him. My son is on the classical liberal conservative side, so I'm not. I'm pretty sure I know where he stands.
Well, you think about some of the things that you see at these school board meetings, and I know you've run for school board before. Up there in Orange County, also, they have escorted folks out of their meetings as of late because they're speakers, meaning the public speakers who sign up for the 3 minutes once a month to try and bring an issue or bring some accountability to those elected officials. Remember, 3 minutes for once a month, and you wonder why when you reach a boiling point, people get a little frustrated because what you say is going on deaf ears. That now apparently in Orange County, if you do not speak onto something on the specific agenda for the night, that you will not be allowed to address those public officials. This is concerning to me.
Yeah, that's because they want a diversity of ideas. Ha ha, really, right? As long as it's their idea, right? Yeah. So,
unbelievable.
Yeah. What I'm enjoying is how many new private schools and parochial schools, and how what's coming about and what's going to happen is that we're going to have a revolution in education, and people realize now that we don't need all these brick and mortar places, and we can do very well teaching our kids ourselves, stuff like that. So there's going to be a renaissance in the abolition of public education. I was glad to see up in Raleigh where Stephen Porter is suing the NC State, kind of like our friend did here, and our late friend here in Wilmington. And of course, I'm glad to see that the big cheese at UNCW is resigning. He should have resigned a long time ago.
That's the yeah, but be careful what you wish for, right? I mean, that's Chancellor Sartorelli.
You get that.
Because who knows who will be leading that university after Sartorelli departs, right?
Well, maybe they'll invite the former lady at the New York Times. Maybe they can get her to come down here.
Oh, that would be something.
She's going to working at Howard University now. Maybe we can convince her to come down here. Clean house. Yeah.
Fish, thanks so much for the commentary, as always.
All right. Bye-bye.
And safe travels up to the State Fair in Raleigh and down to Bowie's Creek over the next couple of days. Campbell, a beautiful campus out there in Bowie's Creek. Of course, I'm a little pushed towards my friends down at Coastal, but nonetheless, a very respected, of course, university up there at Campbell. All right, we've hit the bottom of the hour plus a few minutes. We'll continue right after this here on the Big Talker FM.
Hey everyone, Ben Hawkins here with Cross Country Mortgage. Rates are still at historic lows, and there has never been a better time to purchase your dream home or refinance your existing. With over 300 loan products including conventional, FHA, VA, USDA, renovation, and jumbo, we are certain we have the right loan product for you and your family. Call me today to be pre-qualified to make the offer on your next dream home. 910-352-3373 or visit my website at lendwithben.com.
Tune in on Friday mornings to hear The Construction Connection, a collaborative effort between Joe Catenacci with the Big Talker FM and Cameron Moore, the executive officer of the Wilmington Cape Fear Home Builders Association. You start the conversation and we bring you the answers as we take a regional, in-depth look at growth-related topics and issues centered around the residential and commercial development and building industry. The Construction Connection, Friday mornings on the Big Talker FM.
Termites, mosquitoes, roaches, spiders. The list of insects and pests goes on and on. So how do you keep them all at bay and out of your home? Call the professionals at Bugno Pest Control. That's Mr. Bugno to you, pal. Bugno Pest Control can not only eliminate insects and pests from in and around your home, they also guarantee it. They are fully licensed and insured, family owned and operated for all your pest control needs. Call Bugno Pest Control, 910-367-2501 or visit bugnopestcontrol.com. Rated 5 stars on Angie's List and HomeAdvisor.com.
Those aren't fireworks. The gang violence here in Wilmington has got to be stopped. As your city councilman, I'll give our law enforcement agencies the direction and support they need to make our streets, ball fields, and schools safe. While doing that, I'll also keep our small businesses open so they can do what they do best, work hard and be profitable. I'm Luke Waddell, I'm running for city council, and I ask for your vote. Paid for by the committee to elect Luke Waddell.
Well, maybe that last spot highlighting the candidacy for one of our Wilmington city council candidates, highlighting the rise in violence within our city over the last year. Things have calmed down a bit here in the city of Wilmington, but unfortunately, that's not the case for many of our other cities, particularly our major cities across the country. When you look at what's been going on in New York, Chicago garners headlines on a daily basis, particularly when it comes off the weekends. And in fact, FBI records record murders and homicides in the year of 2020. Bloody Chicago, atop that list. Right now with us to round out our morning program here today, his name is Matt Rosenberg. He's author of the new book, What Next, Chicago? Notes of a Pissed Off Native Son. Matt, it's a pleasure. Thanks so much for holding the line. Good morning.
Good morning, Joe. Thank you for having me on.
So, what is going on in Chicago? We get, the broad strokes of the situation, on a Monday or a Tuesday when we see, 65 people shot, 12 people killed, a 3-year-old involved, in random gunfire and is now dead, and a family is mourning, a baby's loss of life. I mean, it just seems like it's out of control. You've got law enforcement retiring, resigning in record numbers. This is unsustainable, like many other things that we see going on in our country right now.
Absolutely right, Joe. It's a nightmare on the ground. I'm going into the city again this weekend. I'm staying out in the suburbs here with some friends, and I'm frankly worried because police manpower in Chicago may be down up to 50%. It's being reported after a bunch of absences take hold due to the vaccine mandate. But it's already really bad, even with something vaguely resembling full police force. And I would put that in quotes because we're very understaffed. There's not enough feet on the street. But what's happening here? It's just a rolling tragedy every day, every hour. I mean, young men are going to public schools and shooting into the schools. Parents are thinking they need to move out. Many have. At root, it's a breakdown of the family. It's also a breakdown of the local court system. So, I could buff that stone for a while, but that's the long and the short of it.
When we look at, as you said, within the criminal justice and the court system, I mean, I actually pulled a story just for this discussion here this morning. When we talk and we hear all these things like bail reform or letting violent criminals back out on the streets just days after, committing a heinous crime, being charged for one at least. And I get one here this morning. Man who allegedly beat and shot a woman in the hip during an argument over the phone. Well, the 46th person charged with shooting, killing, or trying to kill someone in Chicago this year while out on felony charges. I mean, it's just ridiculous to me.
It is, and some of this traces back to the year 2017 when our Cook County is the big county in which Chicago sits, and a few hundred other suburban towns. In 2017, the Cook County chief judge, a guy named Tim Evans, who used to be a Chicago alderman way back when, instituted bail reform. And of course, if it's done right, that means that first-time nonviolent offenders get out of jail quite possibly before trial. And if they really are first-time nonviolent offenders, maybe that's not so bad. But his judges, his many circuit court judges in the Cook County system, it's a very big court system, have been letting guys out who should not be let out before trial at all. Sometimes they slap an ankle bracelet on them. Usually there's not enough monitoring when guys go off the reservation. And then very often, at least too often, they commit new crimes while awaiting trial. And these are often not small or incidental crimes, but maybe carjackings, maybe shootings, often by guys with prior felony convictions, or they may even be murders. So it's gone kind of nuts. I think a lot of it goes back to judicial elections, which is an eye-glazing subject. But to cut right to the bottom line, we've already got a horrible voter turnout in our local elections at the Chicago City Council and mayoral level, 1/3 of registered voters. And that's partly by design because the politicians have scheduled the elections for essentially the dark of night, odd-numbered years, early months of the year. They like it this way because only the public employee unions and some ineffectual white progressives show up to vote. Minority communities actually, and this is not something you're going to hear a lot of conservative commentators say, minority communities have to step up more greatly to civic engagement, and nobody likes judicial elections. I mean, when we come to those names on the local ballot, we scratch our heads and pick them on the basis of their last names, right? But these guys should be grilled and interviewed about crime and punishment before anybody casts a vote for them, because they're actually at the root here of misapplied bail reform and a lot of the carnage on the streets of Chicago and its suburbs.
Matt Rosenberg, author of a new book, What Next Chicago, Notes of a Pissed Off Native Son. You resided there for some 30 years, and you had some very interesting jobs, not only as a news reporter. I mean, you drove a cab, so you were introduced and have met on a daily basis so many people from so many different backgrounds, from so many different parts of the world who move through the Windy City. And anytime I've been there, not that I'm hanging out, in the crime-ridden areas, but I notice, in certain sections of the city how clean it is and how friendly, that Midwestern sort of spirit is amongst people who do live there and are native there. This is no doubt, in certain sections of a very large city, but all in all, are people on the north side as concerned and frustrated as those who are living in between the bullets and the gunfire on a day-to-day basis on the south side, for instance?
They are, and I should emphasize, and I agree with everything you just said, Joe. Having lived here for 30 years, then having moved back here last year to dig into what was going wrong, this place has had a big imprint on me, and it is, or was, and still could be again, a great American city. The architecture, the music, the intellectual firepower here, the entrepreneurial innovation and know-how, the history of this city is remarkable, and most of the people who live here are good, accomplished, hardworking people who raise their children right. But we have a tyranny of the minority, is how I put it. We have about 1 million households in Chicago, comprising our total city population of about 2.7 million. And if even 5% of those households lack what I call moral authority, which includes, all of the basics of the golden rule, and also especially includes raising your children right, if just 5% of households are failing to live right, then there can be and is now havoc on our streets. So when I went deep into the South Side, here was the interesting thing. I found a lot of success stories and a lot of people who are living with moral authority. I went back to Chicago to meet with Black people in their homes and workplaces on the South Side where I grew up, and to find out what's their take on what's going on. And what I heard, and it shouldn't shock anyone, but it gets forgotten, I heard conservative family values. I heard about faith and family. I heard about financial education, hard work, saving, investment, credit, all that good stuff. The stuff your grandma would tell you. It's well known, and so I don't want to paint with too broad a brush. There are a lot of people on the South Side and the West Side, which is also a very high crime area here, that know about living right and practice it every day. And there are parents who are really trying, black parents, and they are worried and they are sad and dismayed and they are scared because now bullets are being fired into the schools of their children. Bullets are being fired everywhere and for no good reason. So a lot of these young men that are doing this have just run off the rails and their parents aren't really anywhere to be found. So it's kind of a crisis that goes back to the home environment as much as it goes back to the political environment.
And there's no question, I think, when we look at all issues that we face as a society right now, cultural, social, and otherwise, we need to look inside the family unit. And when you do hear and see, success stories from places where, maybe the chips are stacked against you for one reason or the other, it all starts with the fact that you have, a nuclear unit that is there to, help navigate, support, and discipline you as you come up through life. But on that note, it doesn't really help much when you have, like you said, these political tentacles that reach out and allow and, well, I would say encourage, this sort of activity without any sort of consequence. Letting people out on felony charges, violent, heinous crimes. You think these people are just going to go and become upstanding citizens overnight? No, they're going to continue to go back to what they know. And that's, limited opportunity and crime and violence. Why is that such a hard concept for some, of the major progressives and Democrats to get a hold of when we talk about Chicago, New York, any other major city that's been run by Democrats for, 100 years?
There's something that a very savvy observer and analyst named Shelby Steele, a black author, identified. He calls it white guilt. So, and progressives of color have this same sort of guilt. Nobody wants to call it out, right? If you're going to be the skunk at the garden party, if you say the kinds of things that we're saying right now, Joe, people just don't want to be judgy. And so that's where we've ended up. So I think that, a number of things need to happen, and we've got to be aware of needed policy reforms because, like you say, it's maybe not going to get fixed right now at the household level where it needs to get fixed. So we need nonprofits and the media and voters to pay much more attention to local judicial elections. We need policy reforms in policing in Chicago. We need foot patrols in all the high crime neighborhoods. We had that here once in the mid-2010s under Mayor Rahm Emanuel, and it made a difference. A lot of foot patrols, more engagement with people in the community. It cuts violent crime, and it helps you solve more crimes. Then we need to really move fast and break things in our public schools in Chicago. The achievement and performance data is dismal, especially for Black and Latino students. They're just not getting math and reading and writing. The scores are just through the bottom. Then we've got endemic corruption and rigged rules of governance. So we've got to fix those election dates and hinge our local elections to the presidential elections when we get 70% turnout, not 33. We need term limits. We need independently mapped wards for the city of Chicago. There's a heavy amount of gerrymandering going on again right now as the Chicago City Council draws new legislative district boundaries after the census. So there's a lot of inside baseball here that helps to perpetuate everything that's messed up.
And that's kind of been the way of Chicago for a long, long time, that insider baseball, the power struggle that has been won by the obvious players that we see on the TV day to day. It's frankly, it's sad and an embarrassment altogether.
It is, and frankly, and I talk about this frankly in my book, and I believe we have to tear down racial walls around our analysis of this stuff. I'm a white guy with a Jewish last name to boot. I grew up here. We're all Chicagoans. We're all citizens of this republic. And if something is tearing up the city, we can't be applying to comment based on the color of our skin. And one of the things that I say in my book is that, look, for years, it was the Italians and the Irish and the Polish who ran the corrupt political system here, and they cashed in, right? They dealt out the contracts. They rigged the bids and rigged the contract awards. They got the patronage jobs. Well, over time, blacks and Latinos took over, and they now control a majority of the city council and nearly all the high offices at the city and county level. Well, what did they do? They dealt their own people in the same way as the crooked white ethnics, and that's just no good. We get also a mayor here, Lori Lightfoot, who is wedded to the idea of something I call the unified theory of systemic racism. She explains every problem, every shortcoming in terms of systemic racism, and it's frankly nonsense, and she's been called out on it by none other than our gay Latino Democratic alderman, Ray Lopez, a great guy from the 15th Ward. He said, what she's saying is ridiculous. It's not systemic racism that's killing all these young black and Latino men on the streets of Chicago. It's the borderline breakdown of the family unit, he said, and it's generational gang culture. So, we need a guy like that to step up and run for mayor. Which we have another election in 2023. We need our own Eric Adams, in Chicago. New York's likely new mayor, obviously a guy of color, a former cop. He supports police and police accountability. He supports school choice. We need some kind of massive sea change in the kind of people that we elect. And we need, as I've said, a lot greater attention to the obscure judicial elections, because these are the guys letting folks back out on the street who ought to be behind bars.
Matt Rosenberg, his new book, What Next Chicago? Notes of a Pissed Off Native Son. I think he made his case quite clearly here this morning as to why he's so pissed. Matt, thanks so much for the time and the perspective this morning.
Absolutely. And folks can go to Amazon or barnesandnoble.com. Just enter What Next Chicago. They'll get the book. It's online only.
And a great, inside look from one of our, great cities in this nation. And it's a shame that, we've seen this occur again in places like Chicago, New York, sort of, tourist destinations for a lot of Americans and, international tourists over the years. And to, watch, these cities sort of crumble, from inside out. It's really hard to watch, and hopefully, we'll see some turnaround. And Matt laid out the blueprint as to how we can turn that around here this morning. All right, we'll hit one more break before we depart for the day. Your calls, we've got maybe a minute or two if you'd like to jump in at 910-299-7535.
I'm K.O. Davis from K.O.'s Coast to Coast Tree, and I want to be your tree man.
When your trees need cut, 2 letters to know. One is a K, the other is an O. K.O.
Tree man. Proper trimming is the most important thing that you can do, so don't just hire anybody to do it. You need someone that knows what they're doing.
K.O.
Call the professionals at K.O.'s Coast to Coast Tree and visit KOTrees.com.
Mike check. It's Yael Osowski here, Deputy Director of the Consumer Choice Center. You'll hear me every Friday at 9:30 on the Mornings with Joe Catenacci Show, giving you the latest in consumer news, analysis, and political topics to make sure you get your consumer fix. Then hear me and my radio partner in crime, David Clement, on the Consumer Choice Radio Show, Saturdays at 10. Only here on the Big Talker 106.7 FM.
As Wilmington's leader in restorative and regenerative medicine, the Frank Institute specializes in health optimization. Simply put, we use in-depth evaluations and lab testing to determine the best treatments for each patient. So whether you're suffering from an unseen hormonal imbalance or a simple vitamin deficiency, the Frank Institute is ready to get you back to better living. Call us at 910-679-8534 or fill out our symptom survey online at frankinstitute.com. Because at the Frank Institute, you live, we help.
All right, as we close things out here this morning on the Big Talker FM, we'll be back tomorrow, a Freedom Friday. We'll speak with Charlie Rivenbark, Wilmington City Councilman, running for re-election. Chad Adams also to join the program. And with Yael Osowski on maternity leave after the Osowskis welcomed a new baby girl yesterday, we'll hear from David Clement of the Consumer Choice Center. That's all ahead tomorrow. Stay safe out there.
Keeping Holden Beach informed. The Big Talker 106.7 FM WFBT, Carolina Beach.